Kong Min-jae's hand froze on the keyboard. On the monitor in front of him, something impossible was happening. Camera 14. His son's bedroom. 2:47 a.m. The boy was screaming. But that wasn't what made Min-jae's blood run cold. It was what the black woman, the caretaker he'd hired just 3 days ago, was doing about it. She'd burst into the room without hesitation, without checking the cameras first, without calling for backup. And now she was on the floor beside Seo-jun's bed, pulling his trembling 6-year-old son into her arms like she had every right to touch him. Like she knew exactly what he needed. Min-jae watched, unable to move, as Nia Carter did something no one in his house had dared to do in 18 months. She held his son. And Seo-jun, his silent broken boy who flinched from everyone's touch, collapsed against her chest and sobbed. The cameras were supposed to show him threats. Instead, they were showing him something far more dangerous. But to understand how Min-jae ended up watching this woman through 12 monitors at 3 in the morning, you have to go back 2 weeks. To the night everything changed. Welcome to Afro Korean Tales and Stories, the home of Afro Korean love stories where passion crosses cultures and hearts learn new languages. If you're new here, this channel is dedicated to powerful, emotional stories between black women and Korean men, filled with romance, tension, longing, and moments that stay with you long after the story ends. And to our returning family, welcome back. Your love, comments, and support keep these stories alive. Before the story continues, take a moment to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new tale. Now tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? And what part of this story is already pulling at your heart? Let's connect. Let's feel the story together. The black envelope arrived on a Thursday. Min-jae's head of security placed it on his desk without a word, and they both knew what it meant. In their world, black envelopes only carried one kind of message. Inside was a single photograph. Seo-jun, walking to his private academy, his small hand gripping his backpack strap. The image was taken from across the street, close enough to capture the Korean flag patch on his uniform. No note. No demands. Just that picture. They wanted Min-jae to know they could reach his son whenever they chose. Double the perimeter guards, Min-jae said, his voice dangerously quiet. I want armed detail on every route to the school. Sir, we already have. I don't care what we already have. Min-jae's fist came down on the desk. Someone got close enough to photograph my child. That doesn't happen again. But even as he gave the orders, even as his security team scrambled to comply, Min-jae knew the truth. Guards could be bought. Loyalty could be sold. He'd done it himself enough times to know exactly how easy it was. The only thing he could truly trust was what he could see with his own eyes. That's when he made the call. 72 cameras, the installer said, pulling up the schematic on his tablet. Full coverage of the interior and exterior. Motion sensors, night vision, cloud backup. If a mouse crosses your property, you'll know about it. Min-jae studied the blueprint of his estate, now covered in tiny red dots. Each one representing an eye. A witness that couldn't be corrupted. The boy's bedroom too, he said. The installer hesitated. Sir, some clients prefer privacy for family members. Did I ask for your opinion? No, sir. Then install them. His mother had objected, of course. Madame Kong didn't visit often. She had her own estate in Gangnam, but when she'd heard about the cameras, she'd arrived within the hour. You're turning our family home into a prison, she said, standing in his office with her arms crossed. This is beneath our dignity. Dignity doesn't stop bullets, mother. And cameras won't stop determined men. You need to handle this the traditional way. Retaliate. Show strength. Min-jae looked up from the security feeds he'd been reviewing. I have a 6-year-old son who still cries for his dead mother. Forgive me if I'm not interested in starting a war that puts him in the crossfire. Something softened in his mother's expression, but only for a moment. Then at least hire proper protection for the child. A bodyguard. Someone from our world who understands. I'm hiring a caretaker. You already have staff. I'm hiring someone who can be with him constantly. Someone trained in child development. Someone who won't treat him like a responsibility. His mother's eyes narrowed. You mean someone you can watch on those cameras of yours? Min-jae didn't answer. He didn't need to. You're becoming paranoid, Min-jae. I'm being careful. There's a difference. She left without another word, but he could feel her disapproval lingering in the room long after she was gone. It didn't matter. She didn't understand. None of them did. The cameras went live 2 days later, and Min-jae finally slept for the first time in weeks. Nia Carter arrived on a Tuesday morning. Min-jae watched her on camera 3 as she stepped out of the car, a single suitcase in hand. Professional. Composed. Her dark skin stood out against the gray stone of his estate, and he found himself wondering, not for the first time, how she would handle the stairs. His household staff was Korean. His family was traditional. And Seoul, for all its modernity, still had its prejudices. But that wasn't his problem. She'd signed the contract. She knew what she was walking into. He met her in his office, neutral ground. The interview was brief. She had the qualifications. She spoke Korean fluently. She didn't ask unnecessary questions. Perfect. You understand this position requires discretion, Min-jae said, sliding the contract across his desk. I understand, Nia replied. Her voice was calm, professional. I've worked with high-profile families before. Not like mine. She met his eyes then, and he saw something flicker there. Not fear. Not even curiosity. Just awareness. Mr. Kong, I'm here to take care of your son. Whatever else happens in this house isn't my concern. He should have appreciated her directness. Instead, it irritated him. There are cameras throughout the estate, he continued. For security purposes. You'll be monitored at all times. I expected as much. Does that bother you? Should it? The question caught him off guard. Most people shifted uncomfortably when he mentioned the surveillance. They made jokes or asked about privacy or looked for reassurance that he wouldn't watch them too closely. She just looked at him calmly, waiting. My son doesn't speak much, Min-jae said, changing the subject. His mother's death has been difficult for him. I understand. Do you? I understand that grief doesn't follow a timeline, Mr. Kong. And I understand that children need patience, not pressure. Something in her tone made him pause, like she was speaking from experience. But he didn't ask. Her past wasn't relevant. You start today, he said. Mrs. Choi will show you to your quarters. Nia stood, gathering her things. She turned to leave, then hesitated at the door. Mr. Kong. Yes. The cameras in your son's room. Do they record audio? An odd question. Yes. Why? She nodded slowly, as if confirming something to herself. Just wanted to know if you'd hear him when he cries at night. Since you won't be there. The door closed behind her before he could respond. Min-jae sat alone in his office, her words echoing in his mind. That woman was going to be trouble. He could feel it. That night, Min-jae stood in his security room, a converted study on the 3rd floor that now housed 12 monitors and enough recording equipment to make intelligence agencies jealous. Everything was quiet. Perfect. Until camera 14 lit up with movement. His son's bedroom. Min-jae's hand moved to his phone automatically, ready to alert security. But then he saw who it was. Nia. She stood outside Seo Jun's door at 11:47 p.m., completely still. Just listening. What was she doing? Then she did something that made Min-jae lean closer to the screen. She pressed her palm against the door. Gentle. Deliberate. Like she was making a promise through the wood. And then she walked away. Min-jae rewound the footage. Watched it again. Tried to find the threat, the angle, the reason to be concerned. But all he saw was a woman checking on a child she'd just met. A child who was now her responsibility. His responsibility. He told himself it meant nothing. She was doing her job. The cameras were doing theirs. But as he stared at the frozen image of her hand against that door, Min Jae felt something shift in his chest. Something that felt dangerously close to trust. And 3 days later, when those cameras showed him his son breaking down in the middle of the night, when they showed him Nia holding Seo Jun like he was precious, like he was loved, that's when Min Jae realized the cameras had betrayed him. They weren't showing him threats anymore. They were showing him everything he'd been too afraid to feel. Nia had been in worse situations. She reminded herself of this every morning as she walked through the corridors of the Kong estate, feeling eyes on her back. The housekeepers who stopped whispering the moment she entered a room. The security guards who watched her a little too closely. The cook who served her meals last, always last, like an afterthought. She'd been the only black student in her Seoul University program. The only black teacher at her first academy job. The only black woman at diplomatic dinners where she'd accompanied the children she cared for. She knew how to be invisible when she needed to be. But this house was different. Because here, being invisible was impossible. The cameras made sure of that. She doesn't belong here. Nia paused outside the kitchen, her hand frozen on the door. She'd come down for tea. Simple. Innocent. But the voices inside stopped her cold. I'm just saying, the housekeeper continued in Korean. Why would Mr. Kong hire someone like her for the young master? There are plenty of qualified Korean women. Educated women from good families. Maybe that's the point, another voice replied. Someone who has no connections. No family ties. Someone. Temporary. The word hit harder than it should have. Temporary. Nia had heard it before. In every contract she'd signed. Every goodbye she'd said to children she'd grown to love. Every apartment she'd lived in knowing she'd leave before it ever felt like home. But hearing it spoken like this, like she was disposable by design, made something twist in her chest. She could have walked in. Confronted them. Reminded them that she spoke fluent Korean and understood every word. Instead, she turned around and went back to her room. Some battles weren't worth fighting. Not yet. Seo Jun didn't speak to her for the first 3 days. He didn't speak to anyone, really. The boy moved through the house like a ghost, present but not really there. During meals, he pushed food around his plate. During playtime, he sat in the corner of his room, staring at nothing. His father had warned her. He's been difficult. But Nia didn't see difficult. She saw a child drowning in grief, and no one had thrown him a lifeline. On the 4th day, she found him in the library, a massive room filled with books he was too young to read. He sat by the window, looking out at the garden with those sad, dark eyes. Nia didn't ask permission. She simply sat down on the floor beside him. Not too close. Not invading his space. Just there. They sat in silence for 20 minutes. Then Seo Jun spoke, so quietly she almost missed it. You talk different. Nia glanced at him. Different how? You're Korean. It sounds. Not from here. She smiled. That's because I learned it in America first. My teacher was from Busan. Why did you learn Korean? Because I wanted to live here. And I thought if I was going to live somewhere, I should respect the language. The culture. Seo Jun was quiet for a moment. Then, do you miss America? Sometimes. Do you miss your mother? The question was bold. Dangerous, even. But Nia had learned that sometimes children needed permission to say the thing everyone else was afraid to hear. Seo Jun's small hands clenched in his lap. Everyone says I should stop being sad. That it's been long enough. Who says that? Grandmother. Uncle. The tutors. Nia felt anger flash through her, hot and sharp. But she kept her voice gentle. Your grandmother and uncle love you. But they're wrong about this. There's no timer on grief, Seo Jun. You get to be sad for as long as you need to be. The boy's eyes filled with tears. Really? Really? And then, so quietly she almost didn't hear it, he whispered. I can't remember her voice anymore. Nia's heart broke. She wanted to pull him into her arms, hold him the way no one else seemed willing to. But she knew better. Trust had to be earned, not demanded. So instead, she said, then we'll remember other things. The way she laughed. Her favorite song. The stories she told you. We'll keep those safe until you're ready. Seojun looked at her then, really looked at her, and Nia saw something shift in his expression. Hope, maybe. Or the beginning of it. Min Jae's mother arrived unannounced on Friday. Nia was reading to Seojun in the garden when the sleek black car pulled up to the estate. She knew immediately who it was by the way the entire household snapped to attention. Madame Kong stepped out wearing a designer hanbok, her silver hair pulled back in an elegant knot. She was striking, beautiful in that sharp, untouchable way that powerful women often were. And when her eyes landed on Nia, sitting on a blanket with her grandson, the temperature dropped 10 degrees. Seojun, Madame Kong called out in Korean. Come here. The boy hesitated, glancing at Nia. It's okay, Nia said softly. Go say hello to your grandmother. She watched as Seojun walked slowly toward the older woman, and she didn't miss the way Madame Kang's gaze swept over him, checking for something. What? Nia couldn't say. Then those cold eyes returned to her. You must be the new caretaker. Nia stood, brushing grass from her dress. Yes, ma'am. Nia Carter. I see. Madame Kang's tone was pleasant enough, but Nia had been in Korea long enough to recognize the ice beneath it. My son didn't mention you were foreign. I'm American, Nia said evenly, but I've lived in Seoul for 4 years. How modern of him. The word was a weapon, and they both knew it. Madame Kong turned to her grandson. Seojun, go inside. I need to speak with your caretaker privately. The boy's eyes went wide with something that looked like fear. But he obeyed, disappearing into the house. The moment he was gone, Madame Kang's pleasant mask dropped entirely. Let me be clear, Miss Carter. I don't know what qualifications my son thinks you have, but this family has standards, traditions, a legacy that goes back generations. I'm aware. Are you? Because right now, you are caring for the heir to one of the most powerful families in Seoul. Do you understand what that means? Nia met her gaze steadily. It means I'm responsible for a 6-year-old boy who lost his mother and needs someone to care about him. That's what it means to me. Something flickered in Madame Kang's expression. Surprise, maybe, that Nia had dared to push back. That boy is more than just a child, Miss Carter. He is a symbol, a continuation of our bloodline. And every person who has access to him is a potential risk. I'm not a risk. I'm a caretaker. You're an outsider. The words were sharp, final. And outsiders don't last long in this world. Before Nia could respond, Madame Kong turned and walked toward the house, leaving her standing alone in the garden. Nia's hands were shaking. Not from fear. From rage. Because she'd heard this speech before. Different words, different people, but always the same message. You don't belong here. But here was the thing they didn't understand. Nia had spent her whole life not belonging. She'd learned to build her own place in spaces that didn't want her. She'd learned to stand tall when people tried to make her feel small. And she wasn't about to let some cold, cruel grandmother make her feel like she didn't deserve to care for a child who desperately needed someone. Even if that grandmother was right about one thing. Outsiders didn't last long in this world. Not unless they were willing to fight. That night, Nia lay in bed staring at the ceiling, acutely aware of the camera in the corner of her room. She wondered if Min Jae was watching. She wondered if he'd seen his mother's visit. If he knew what had been said. She wondered if he even cared. Probably not. To him, she was just another employee. Monitored. Managed. Temporary. But then she thought about Seojun's small voice in the library. I can't remember her voice anymore. And Nia made a decision. She didn't care if the staff whispered. Didn't care if Madame Kong disapproved. Didn't care if the cameras watched her every move. That little boy needed someone in his corner. And until they fired her or forced her out, that someone was going to be her. She closed her eyes, willing herself to sleep. But down the hall, in the master wing, a light was still on. And on 12 different monitors, A man who trusted no one sat watching footage from the garden, replaying the moment his mother had confronted his son's caretaker. Watching the way Nia's hands had trembled. The way she'd stood her ground anyway. And Min Jae felt something dangerous stir in his chest. Something that felt uncomfortably like admiration. He rewound the footage one more time. Just to be sure he'd seen it right. Just to understand why this woman, this outsider who should have been intimidated, who should have been afraid, looked his mother in the eye and refused to back down. The cameras showed him everything. Everything except the answer to the question that was starting to keep him awake at night. Who exactly was Nia Carter? And why couldn't he stop watching her? The alert came at 2:47 a.m. Min Jae was still awake. He was always awake these days, reviewing contracts in his study when his phone buzzed with a notification. Camera 14. Motion detected. Seo Jun's bedroom. His hand was already reaching for the security line when he pulled up the live feed on his laptop. What he saw made his blood freeze. His son was sitting up in bed, clutching his chest, gasping for air like he was drowning. His small face was twisted in terror, tears streaming down his cheeks. A panic attack. Min Jae was on his feet, moving toward the door, when camera 14 caught movement. Nia. She burst into the room in pajama pants and an oversized t-shirt, her hair wrapped in a silk scarf. She didn't hesitate. Didn't check the monitors first or call for help. She went straight to Seo Jun. And Min Jae stopped in the doorway of his study, unable to move. Unable to look away from the screen. Seo Jun, baby, look at me. Nia's voice came through the audio feed, calm but urgent. She knelt beside the bed, her hands gentle on the boy's shoulders. I can't breathe. Seo Jun choked out between sobs. Yes, you can. You're breathing right now. Feel my hands. I've got you. But Seo Jun was spiraling, his breaths coming in short, panicked gasps. His eyes were unfocused, lost in whatever nightmare had gripped him. Min Jae had seen this before. 18 months ago, right after his wife died. The night terrors. The panic attacks. The way his son would wake up screaming, convinced something terrible was happening. The doctors had said it was normal grief. That it would pass. It hadn't. And Min Jae, ashamed as he was to admit it, hadn't known how to help. He'd hired therapists. Bought medications. Done everything except the one thing his son actually needed. Be there. But now, watching through the camera, he saw what he'd been missing. Seo Jun, listen to my voice. Nia pulled the boy into her lap, wrapping her arms around him. We're going to count together, okay? Can you count with me? I can't. Yes, you can. 1. Say it with me. 1. Oh, 1. Good. 2. Keep going, baby. 2. T2. Nia rocked him gently, her voice steady and sure. 3. You're doing so good. 3. Min Jae leaned closer to the screen, his chest tight. This woman, this stranger who'd been in their house for barely a week, was doing what he couldn't, what he'd been too afraid to even try. She was reaching his son. 4. That's it. Feel how your breathing is slowing down. 4. 4, Seo Jun whispered, his gasps becoming longer, deeper. 5. I've got you. You're safe. 5. 5. They counted to 20 together. Then 30. And by the time they reached 50, Seo Jun's breathing had steadied, his small body sagging against Nia's chest in exhaustion. There you are, Nia murmured, pressing a kiss to the top of his head. I knew you could do it. I'm sorry, Seo Jun whispered, his voice broken. For what? For waking you up. For being broken. Min Jae's hand clenched into a fist. Broken. His 6-year-old son thought he was broken. And Min Jae hadn't even known. You listen to me, Seo Jun. Nia pulled back just enough to look the boy in the eyes. You are not broken. You hear me. You're hurting. And that's different. But I can't stop. I know. I know it feels like it's never going to end. But it will. I promise you it will. How do you know? Nia was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that made Min-jae's breath catch. Because I used to have panic attacks too. When I was a little older than you. Seo-jun looked up at her, his eyes wide. You did. Ma'am. My mama died when I was 10. And for a long time after, I'd wake up in the middle of the night thinking I couldn't breathe. Thinking something bad was going to happen. What did you do? My grandmother taught me what I just taught you. Count. Breathe. Remember that feelings pass, even the scary ones. Seo-jun was silent, processing this. Then, does it still happen? Sometimes. Not as much anymore. But when it does, I know what to do. Will you teach me? How to make it stop? Nia smiled, and even through the grainy camera feed, Min-jae could see the tenderness in her expression. I'll teach you everything I know. Deal. Deal. She held out her pinky finger, and after a moment, Seo-jun linked his with hers. A promise. Made in the middle of the night when no one else was watching. Except someone was watching. Do you want to try going back to sleep? Nia asked gently. Seo-jun shook his head, his small hands gripping her shirt. Can you stay? Just for a little while. Of course. Nia settled back against the headboard, letting Seo-jun curl into her side. And then she did something that made Min-jae's throat tighten. She started to sing. It was a lullaby. He didn't recognize the language at first. English, maybe. Or something older. Her voice was soft and low, barely above a whisper, but it carried through the audio feed with perfect clarity. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. No. He knew this song. His wife used to sing it sometimes, though she'd never learned all the words. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird. Seo-jun's eyes were already starting to close, his breathing evening out. And if that mockingbird don't sing? Min-jae realized he was standing in his study, gripping the edge of his desk, staring at the screen like it held the answers to questions he didn't know how to ask. This woman had walked into their lives a week ago. A week. And already she was giving his son something Min-jae hadn't been able to provide in 18 months. Safety. Comfort. The feeling that someone would be there when the nightmares came. Mama's gonna buy you a diamond ring. Nia's hand moved in gentle circles on Seo-jun's back, and Min-jae watched as his son, his silent, wounded, unreachable son, finally surrendered to sleep. The cameras showed him everything, but they couldn't show him why his chest ached, why his hands were trembling, why, for the first time since his wife died, he felt something crack open inside him, something that felt dangerously close to hope. Nia stayed for another 20 minutes after Seo-jun fell asleep. Min-jae watched as she carefully extracted herself from the bed, tucking the blankets around the boy with practiced care. She stood there for a moment, looking down at him with an expression Min-jae couldn't quite name. Love. No. Too soon for that. But something close to it. Something protective and fierce. Then she turned and looked directly at the camera. Min-jae's breath stopped. She couldn't know he was watching. The cameras were discreet, hidden in the corners of rooms. Most people forgot they were there after a few days. But Nia didn't look like she'd forgotten. She looked like she knew exactly where the lens was. And for 3 heartbeats, she stared into it. Into him. Then she mouthed 2 words. He's okay. And left the room. Min-jae sat in the dark of his study for a long time after that, the monitors glowing in front of him. He should have gone to bed. Should have been relieved that the crisis was handled. Should have felt vindicated that the cameras had alerted him to the problem, that his system had worked exactly as designed. Instead, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Shame. Because while he'd been watching through a screen, Nia had been there. In the room. Holding his son. Singing him back to sleep. The cameras had shown him what was happening. But they hadn't shown him what mattered. They hadn't shown him that safety wasn't something you could monitor or control. It was something you had to give. With your hands. Your voice. Your presence. And Min-jae, with all his power, all his resources, all his careful planning, had forgotten how. He pulled up the footage from earlier that evening. Rewound to the moment Nia had burst into Seo-jun's room. She'd been barefoot, he noticed. No time to put on shoes. She'd heard his son's distress and run. Not because it was her job. Because she cared. Min-jae watched the whole sequence again. Then again. And somewhere around the fourth replay, he realized he wasn't watching anymore to analyze or evaluate or assess threats. He was watching because he couldn't look away from her. From the gentle strength in her hands. The certainty in her voice. The way she'd looked into the camera and told him, without words, that everything was going to be okay. Like she knew he was there. Like she knew he was afraid. Like she knew him. And that terrified him more than any threat from a rival syndicate ever could. Because cameras could protect him from external dangers. But they couldn't protect him from this. From her. From the way she was slowly, carefully, dangerously making him feel things he'd locked away the day his wife was buried. Min-jae closed the laptop. But he didn't sleep. He couldn't. Because somewhere in this house, Nia Carter was probably already asleep. And Min-jae was left alone with the uncomfortable truth the cameras had finally revealed. He wasn't watching her to keep his son safe anymore. He was watching her because she made him want to believe in something he'd given up on. The possibility that broken things could be healed. And that maybe, just maybe, he was one of them. Min-jae told himself he was being thorough. That's what he said when Jin-ho found him in the surveillance room at midnight on a Wednesday, reviewing footage from 3 days ago. When his assistant asked why he needed Tuesday's recordings sent to his private server. When he skipped a business dinner to watch Camera 9, the playroom, for 2 straight hours. Being thorough. Monitoring his son's progress. Standard security protocol. But that was a lie. And Min-jae knew it. Because security protocol didn't explain why he'd rewound the same 15-second clip of Nia laughing 6 times. Why he'd paused on the moment she'd pressed her hand to her chest, exhausted, before taking a breath and smiling for Seo-jun again. Why he noticed that she touched the small cross necklace at her throat whenever she was thinking about something sad. He wasn't watching for threats anymore. He was watching her. And God help him, he couldn't stop. It started innocently enough. After the panic attack incident, Min-jae began reviewing the daily footage more carefully. Just to ensure Seo-jun was improving, he told himself. To verify Nia was handling things professionally. But somewhere between Monday and Friday, the focus shifted. He started seeing things the cameras had been showing him all along, but he'd been too blind to notice. The way Nia's smile would falter the moment Seo-jun turned away. How she'd stand at the window during his afternoon nap, her shoulders tight, staring at nothing. The exhaustion she carried like a weight she'd gotten too good at hiding. The patience. The endless, devastating patience. When Seo-jun knocked over his juice for the 3rd time in one meal, she didn't sigh. Didn't show frustration. Just cleaned it up and said, "It's okay, baby. Accidents happen." When he had a meltdown over a broken toy, she sat on the floor beside him and waited. Didn't rush him. Didn't tell him to stop crying. Just waited until he was ready to talk. And Min-jae found himself wondering, who had shown her that kind of patience when she needed it? Who had taught her to give so much while asking for nothing in return? You're watching the wrong cameras. Min-jae looked up to find Jin-ho standing in the doorway of the surveillance room, arms crossed. "Excuse me. Camera 14. The northeast perimeter. That's where we had the motion sensor alert 20 minutes ago." Jin-ho nodded toward the monitors. "You're watching Camera 9. The playroom. Which has been empty for an hour." Min-jae's jaw tightened. "I was reviewing earlier footage. For the 4th night in a row. I don't recall asking for your opinion on my security review process." Jin-ho was quiet for a moment. Then he moved closer, lowering his voice. "Sir, I've worked for you for 10 years. I've never questioned your judgment. But this isn't about security anymore." "Careful, Jin-ho. Someone needs to say it." The older man's expression was serious. "You're watching her. Not for threats. Not for mistakes. You're watching her because you can't look away." The words hit like a physical blow. Because they were true. Min-jae leaned back in his chair, suddenly exhausted. When did it become so obvious? About 2 weeks ago. Right around the time you started asking which cameras had the clearest audio feed from the garden. Min-jae closed his eyes. I'm losing my mind. No, sir. You're feeling something. There's a difference. In my world, they're the same thing. Jin-ho was quiet for a moment. Your mother called again today. She wants a full background investigation on Miss Carter. Employment history, family connections, previous relationships. No. Min-jae's eyes snapped open. Absolutely not. Sir, she's insisting. I don't care what she's insisting. Nia's personal life is none of my mother's business. With respect, the woman caring for your son is everyone's business in this family. She's doing an excellent job with Seo-jun. That's all that matters. Jin-ho studied him carefully. Is it? Because the way you just said her name suggests it matters quite a bit more than that. Min-jae had no response. Jin-ho sighed. The staff is talking. About how much time you spend watching the monitors. About the way you look at her when you think no one notices. I don't look at her any particular way. Sir, I was there last Tuesday when she came to your office to discuss Seo-jun's therapy schedule. You didn't hear a word she said for the first 2 minutes because you were too busy staring at her like she'd hung the moon. Heat crept up Min-jae's neck. That's ridiculous. Is it? Because I had to repeat her question 3 times before you responded. Min-jae stood abruptly, turning away from the monitors. This conversation is over. One more thing. Jin-ho's voice was gentle now. Cameras show you what people do, not who they are. If you want to know Miss Carter, really know her, maybe it's time to stop watching and start talking. The door closed behind him, leaving Min-jae alone with 12 glowing screens and a truth that felt like it was suffocating him. He was falling for her, and he had absolutely no idea what to do about it. He found her in the library 2 nights later. Min-jae hadn't planned it. He'd told himself he was just checking the East Wing, making his usual rounds. But his feet carried him to the one room he knew she visited every evening after Seo-jun fell asleep. Nia was curled in the window seat, a book abandoned in her lap, staring out at the garden. She looked tired, beautiful, sad in a way that made his chest ache. She didn't notice him at first. And Min-jae stood in the doorway, doing what he'd been doing for weeks. Watching. But this time felt different. Because there was no screen between them. No camera to hide behind. Just the raw, terrifying reality of being in the same room with her. You can come in, Nia said without turning around. I know you're there. Min-jae's breath caught. How? The cameras. She finally looked at him, and something in her expression made his heart stutter. They have a small red light when they're recording. It reflects in the window glass. You turned them off about 30 seconds ago. Which means you're here in person. He should have felt caught. Embarrassed. Instead, he felt seen. You pay attention, he said, moving into the room. So do you. Too much attention, actually. The accusation hung between them, soft but unmistakable. Min-jae stopped a few feet away. I don't know what you mean. Don't you? Nia stood, setting her book aside. Camera 9 records the playroom. Camera 7 covers the garden. Camera 11 watches the kitchen. And you've reviewed footage from all 3 every single night this week. His pulse kicked up. How do you know that? Because Jin-ho told me. He wanted to make sure I understood what I was walking into. Walking into what? This. She gestured between them. Whatever this is that you won't name but can't seem to stop. Min-jae felt like the air had been sucked from the room. I watch because I need to keep my son safe, he said, but even he could hear how weak it sounded. No. Nia's voice was quiet but firm. You watch because you're afraid. Of feeling something. Of letting someone in. Of admitting that maybe, just maybe, you can't control everything. The words cut deep. You don't know anything about me, Min-jae said, his voice rougher than he intended. Don't I? She moved closer, and he caught the scent of her perfume. vanilla and something warm. I know you haven't slept more than 4 hours a night since I arrived. I know you eat lunch at your desk because sitting at the family table reminds you she's not there. I know you check on Seo Jun 3 times every night but never go into his room because you're terrified of saying the wrong thing. Min Jae's hands clenched at his sides. How? The cameras work both ways, Min Jae. You're not the only one who's been watching. The confession struck him speechless. She'd been watching him, noticing him, seeing him in ways he'd thought impossible. Why? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Because I wanted to understand you. The man who trusts cameras more than people. Who built walls so high he forgot what it feels like to be on the other side of them. And what did you see? Nia looked at him with an expression that felt like it reached inside his chest and grabbed hold of something he'd thought was dead. Someone who's been alone for so long he's forgotten he doesn't have to be. The words broke something in him. Min Jae closed the distance between them before he could think better of it, stopping close enough that he could see the gold flecks in her brown eyes. Nia! This is a bad idea, she whispered, but she didn't step back. I know. Your family would never accept it. Your mother already hates me. The staff talks. My visa is dependent on this job. I know. I could lose everything. I know. His hand lifted, hovering near her face but not quite touching. Tell me to stop. Nia's breath shuddered. I can't. Why not? Because I've been watching you too. And God help me, I can't figure out if you're the most dangerous man I've ever met or the safest. What if I'm both? Her eyes searched his face. Then we're both in trouble. 3 heartbeats. Neither of them moved. Then a door slammed somewhere in the house, and reality crashed back in. Nia stepped back, wrapping her arms around herself. We can't do this. I haven't done anything. Yet. But you want to. I can see it. She shook her head. I came to Korea to escape a man who watched me obsessively, who made me feel special and then used it to control me. I can't, go through that again. The comparison felt like a knife between his ribs. I'm not him. I know you're not. That's what terrifies me. Nia moved toward the door. Because with him, I knew it was wrong from the start. But with you, you make it feel like maybe it could be right. And that's so much more dangerous. Nia, wait. Good night, Mr. Kong. The formality was deliberate. A line being drawn. She left him standing in the library, alone with the ghost of her presence and words that felt like both a rejection and an invitation. Min Jae didn't return to the surveillance room that night. He sat in the dark library for an hour, replaying every word, every look, every moment of tension that had crackled between them. You make it feel like maybe it could be right. His phone buzzed. A message from his mother. I'm coming tomorrow. We need to discuss the caretaker situation. This has gone on long enough. Min Jae stared at the screen, his chest tight. His mother. The cameras. The impossible distance between who he was and what he wanted. Everything was about to get infinitely more complicated. And the cameras that had shown him Nia in the first place couldn't tell him what to do now. For the first time in years, Min Jae was completely, terrifyingly blind. And the only person who could help him see clearly was the one woman he couldn't afford to want. But God, he wanted her anyway. Nia knew she didn't belong at the dinner table. She'd tried to tell Min Jae that morning. Tried to explain that family gatherings weren't part of her job description. That she could eat in the kitchen with the staff, or better yet, in her room where no one would have to pretend she was welcome. But he'd looked at her with those dark, unreadable eyes and said, Seojun wants you there. That's all that matters. Except it wasn't all that mattered. Not when his mother sat at the head of the table like a queen on a throne, her cold gaze sweeping over Nia like she was something that had crawled in from the garden. Not when his uncle, a man with silver hair and a face carved from stone, kept asking pointed questions about her people and her background. Not when the entire extended Kong family had gathered to celebrate his late wife's birthday, and Nia was the only person in the room who didn't belong to their world. She was a witness to their grief, an intruder in their memories, and everyone knew it. So, Miss Carter. Nia looked up from her untouched plate to find Min Jae's uncle studying her with barely concealed contempt. Yes, sir. I understand you're from America. Chicago, is it? Yes, sir. And you came to Korea for… what exactly? Adventure. Exoticism. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Or perhaps you were drawn to the opportunities available to foreign women in Seoul? The implication hung in the air like poison. Nia felt every eye at the table turn to her, felt her face grow hot, felt the familiar shame of being reduced to a stereotype by people who decided who she was before she'd even opened her mouth. She could have stayed silent, should have stayed silent. Instead, she met his gaze steadily. I came to Korea because I wanted to work with children in a multicultural environment. Seoul offered opportunities that Chicago didn't. How fortunate for you. His tone suggested it was anything but. And how convenient that you ended up in one of Korea's most prominent households. Uncle. Min Jae's voice cut through the tension like a blade. That's enough. But his uncle wasn't finished. I'm simply curious about the woman who has such unfettered access to our family's heir. Surely that's not unreasonable. What's unreasonable, Min Jae said quietly, is interrogating my employee at a family dinner. Employee. His mother spoke for the first time, her voice like ice. Is that all she is, Min Jae? Because the staff tells a different story. Nia's stomach dropped. I don't know what the staff has been saying, Min Jae started. They say you spend every evening reviewing surveillance footage of her. That you've been seen entering her quarters. That you look at her the way you used to look at Ji-hyun. The name of his dead wife fell like a stone into still water. The entire table went silent. Nia couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't believe this was happening. Mother, Min Jae said, his voice dangerously low. You're crossing a line. No, you've crossed a line. Madame Kang's eyes were sharp as knives. This woman, this outsider, has been in our home for barely a month, and already she's disrupting everything. The household is in chaos. Seo Jun is becoming too attached. And you, her voice cracked slightly. You're forgetting your place. Your duty. Your wife's memory. I haven't forgotten anything. Haven't you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're about to make a catastrophic mistake. Again. The word, again, hit Nia like a slap. What did that mean? What mistake had Min Jae made before? But before she could process it, his cousin, a woman in her 40s with diamonds at her throat, leaned forward with false sympathy. Perhaps Miss Carter doesn't understand our culture. In Korea, we have certain expectations about who belongs in our families. Bloodlines matter. Heritage matters. I understand perfectly, Nia said, finding her voice despite the tremor in it. You're saying I don't belong here because I'm black. The table erupted. How dare you? That's not what she meant. This is exactly the problem with hiring foreigners who don't understand. Enough. Min Jae's voice cut through the chaos like thunder. He stood, his hands flat on the table, his entire body radiating barely controlled fury. Every single person at this table will listen to me very carefully. Miss Carter is here because she is the best caretaker my son has ever had. Because she showed up when Seo Jun was drowning in grief and none of you, he looked around the table, none of you knew what to do about it. His mother opened her mouth, but he continued. She doesn't deserve your interrogation. She doesn't deserve your suspicion. And she sure as hell doesn't deserve to sit here and be insulted by people who should know better. Min Jae, his uncle started. I'm not finished. Min Jae's eyes were blazing now. You want to talk about bloodlines and heritage? Fine. Let's talk about how our heritage has produced a 6-year-old boy so afraid of disappointing this family that he stopped speaking for 3 months. Let's talk about how our expectations have created a household so cold that my son thought no one would love him if he showed weakness. The words landed like bombs. Miss Carter didn't just take care of my son. She saved him. She gave him permission to grieve. To be a child. To feel safe. Min Jae looked directly at his mother. Something none of us, including me, were capable of giving him. Madame Kang's face had gone pale. So if anyone has a problem with Nia being here, Min-jae continued, using her first name deliberately, you can take it up with me. But you will not, ever again, speak to her like she's beneath you. Are we clear? Silence. Absolute, devastating silence. Nia's hands were shaking in her lap. No one had ever defended her like that. Not her ex-boyfriend who'd claimed to love her. Not her previous employers who'd promised support. No one. And certainly not a man like Kang Min-jae, who had everything to lose by standing up for her. His mother stood slowly, her face a mask of cold fury. This conversation is not over. Yes, it is. Min-jae's voice was final. You're making a mistake, Min-jae. One that will cost you everything. Then it's my mistake to make. Madame Kang looked at Nia then, and the hatred in her eyes was so pure it took Nia's breath away. You won't last, she said quietly. Women like you never do in families like ours. Enjoy it while it lasts, Miss Carter. Because I promise you, it won't last long. She swept from the room, and like dominoes, the rest of the family followed. Within minutes, the dining room was empty except for Min-jae, Nia, and Seo-jun, who'd been sitting silently through the entire exchange, his small face pale with fear. I'm sorry, Nia whispered, her voice breaking. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have. Don't. Min-jae moved around the table toward her. Don't apologize for existing. Don't apologize for being exactly who you are. But your family. My family is wrong. About you. About what matters. About everything. Nia looked up at him, and something in his expression made her chest ache. He'd just blown up his entire family dinner. For her. Why did you do that? She asked. Because you deserved it. That's not an answer. Min-jae was quiet for a moment. Then he said, because I'm tired of watching you be invisible. Tired of seeing you shrink yourself to make other people comfortable. Tired of pretending I don't see how much it costs you to stay silent. Min-jae. You asked me once why I hired you. I told you it was because you saw Seo-jun as a child, not a responsibility. He paused. But the truth is, you saw me too. The broken parts one thought I'd hidden. And you didn't look away. Nia's breath caught. So when they tried to make you invisible tonight, Min-jae continued, I couldn't let it stand. Because you're the most visible person in my world right now. And I'm done pretending you're not. The confession hung between them, electric and terrifying. Appa! They both turned to find Seo-jun watching them with wide eyes. Yes, buddy. Is Nia leaving? Like everyone said. The question broke Nia's heart. Min-jae knelt beside his son. No. Nia's not going anywhere. I promise. But grandmother said. Grandmother was wrong. Min-jae looked at Nia as he said it. Nia belongs here. With us. For as long as she wants to stay. Seo-jun seemed to consider this. Then he did something that made Nia's eyes sting with tears. He walked over and took her hand. I want you to stay, he whispered. Please don't leave me. Nia knelt down, pulling him into her arms. I'm not leaving, baby. I promise. She meant it. Even though she knew promises like that were dangerous in a world like this. Even though she knew Min-jae's mother wouldn't stop until she was gone. Even though she knew she was falling for a man she couldn't have. That night, Nia stood in front of the bathroom mirror, replaying every moment of the dinner. The humiliation. The anger. The way Min-jae had stood up for her like she was worth fighting for. No one had ever done that before. And it terrified her how much she wanted him to do it again. There was a soft knock on her door. Nia opened it to find Min-jae standing in the hallway, still in his dinner clothes, looking exhausted and fierce and beautiful. I need to tell you something, he said without preamble. Okay. What my mother said tonight, about me making a mistake again. She was talking about my wife. Nia's stomach tightened. Min-jae, you don't have to. Ji-hyun wasn't from our world. She was an artist. A painter. My mother hated her from the moment we met. He looked at Nia with raw honesty. I married her anyway, and my family made her life hell for it. They never accepted her. Never stopped trying to break us apart. What happened? She died in a car accident. On her way to leave me. The words hit like a physical blow. She was going to her sister's house with Seo Jun. She'd finally had enough of being treated like an outsider in her own home. Enough of my mother's cruelty. Enough of me failing to protect her from it all. His voice cracked. The last thing she said to me was that she deserved better. And she was right. Nia didn't know what to say. I'm telling you this, Min Jae continued, because I need you to understand what you're walking into. My family destroyed one woman I cared about. They'll try to destroy you too. Then why tell me to stay? Because this time I won't let them. He stepped closer, and Nia's breath caught. This time, I'm choosing differently. I'm fighting differently. He stopped, his eyes searching her face. I'm falling for you, Nia. And I need you to know that before this gets any more complicated. The world tilted. Min Jae. You don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. You're not invisible. Not to me. Not anymore. He turned to leave, and Nia's voice stopped him. I'm falling for you too. Min Jae froze. And that's why I'm terrified, Nia continued. Because I've already lost everything once for a man who said he'd protect me. I can't survive that again. Then don't trust my words. Min Jae looked back at her. Trust my actions. Starting tonight. He left her standing in the doorway, her heart racing, her mind spinning. And somewhere in the house, on 12 different monitors, cameras recorded empty rooms and silent hallways. But they couldn't record what had just shifted between them. They couldn't record the moment everything changed. The moment Nia stopped being just the caretaker and became the woman Kang Min Jae was willing to lose everything for. The alarm screamed through the house at 11:47 p.m. Nia jolted awake, her heart hammering, disoriented in the darkness. For 3 seconds, she didn't understand what was happening. Then she heard it. Gunshots. Distant but unmistakable. Sharp cracks that echoed through the night like breaking bones. And her first thought, her only thought, was Seo Jun. She was out of bed and running before her mind fully caught up with her body. No shoes. No plan. Just pure, animal instinct driving her down the hallway toward his room. The estate was chaos. Security alarms blaring. Red emergency lights strobing. Voices shouting in Korean. Commands she couldn't fully process through the adrenaline flooding her system. She burst into Seo Jun's room to find him sitting up in bed, tears streaming down his face, hands pressed over his ears. Nia! He sobbed her name like a prayer. She was across the room in 3 steps, pulling him into her arms. I've got you. I've got you, baby. What's happening? Where's Appa? I don't know, but we're going to be okay. I promise. It was a promise she had no right to make. But she made it anyway. The door slammed open. Nia spun, instinctively placing herself between Seo Jun and whoever was coming through. It was Jin Ho, his face grim, a gun in his hand. We need to move. Now. What's happening? Breach on the south wall. We don't know how many. Mr. Kang's orders are to get you both to the safe room. Nia's mind raced. Where is he? Handling it. Move. Miss Carter. We don't have time. She scooped Seo Jun into her arms. He was getting too big for this, but fear made her strong, and followed Jin Ho into the hallway. The house had transformed into something from a nightmare. Staff running. Guards taking positions. The smell of gunpowder drifting through the air. This was Min Jae's world. The world she'd been insulated from. The world that could kill them all. They were halfway to the safe room when the lights cut out. Complete darkness. Seo Jun screamed. Stay behind me, Jin Ho commanded, his voice tight. Emergency lights flickered on, casting everything in eerie red. They turned a corner and came face to face with a man in black tactical gear. Time slowed. Nia saw the gun. Saw it rising. Saw Jin Ho moving to intercept. And she did the only thing her body knew how to do. She turned, curling herself around Seo Jun, making herself the shield between him and whatever was coming. A shot rang out. Then another. Then silence. Nia waited for pain. For the impact. For the end. But it didn't come. Clear. Jinho's voice was shaking. Go. Now. Go. Nia's legs were trembling so badly she could barely walk, but she ran. Ran with Seo Jun's face pressed against her shoulder, his small body shaking with sobs, his fingers digging into her skin hard enough to bruise. She didn't care. All that mattered was getting him somewhere safe. They made it to the safe room, a reinforced steel door hidden behind a bookshelf in Min Jae's study. Jinho punched in the code, shoved them inside, and sealed the door behind them. The sudden silence was deafening. Nia sank to the floor, still holding Seo Jun, her entire body shaking with aftershock. They were alive. They were safe. But Min Jae was out there. In the chaos. In the danger. Facing men with guns who wanted to hurt him, hurt his family, hurt everything he'd built. And she couldn't do anything but sit in this concrete box and wait. Nia! Seo Jun's voice was small, muffled against her chest. I'm here, baby. I was so scared. Me too. But you came. You came for me. Nia pulled back just enough to look at his tear-streaked face. Of course I came for you. I'll always come for you. Even when it's dangerous. Especially when it's dangerous. Seo Jun buried his face against her again, and Nia held him, rocking slightly, humming the same lullaby she'd sung the night of his panic attack. Hush, little baby. Don't say a word. Time became meaningless in the safe room. Minutes or hours, she couldn't tell. All she knew was the weight of the child in her arms and the terror clawing at her chest every time she thought about Min Jae out there. Please, she thought. Please let him be okay. She didn't know who she was praying to. But she prayed anyway. The door opened an eternity later. Nia's head snapped up, her arms tightening around Seo Jun. And then she saw him. Min Jae. Alive. Standing. There was blood on his sleeve and a cut above his eyebrow, but he was alive. Appa! Seo Jun scrambled out of Nia's arms and ran to his father. Min Jae caught him, lifting him up, pressing his face into his son's hair. You're okay. You're safe. You're safe. But his eyes were on Nia, and the look in them made her breath stop. Raw. Desperate. Devastated. Everyone out, Min Jae said, his voice rough. Jinho, who'd entered behind him, nodded. Sir. Out. Now. All of you. The security team filed out, and Jinho gave Nia one long look before closing the door. They were alone. Min Jae set Seo Jun down gently. Buddy, I need you to go with Mrs. Choi for a few minutes, okay? She's going to get you some warm milk. But, please, Seo Jun, I need to talk to Nia. The boy looked between them, seeming to sense something significant in the air. Finally, he nodded and left, the door clicking shut behind him. And then it was just the two of them in the safe room, and Nia could see Min Jae's carefully constructed control starting to crack. Jinho told me what you did. Nia stood on shaking legs. You put yourself between my son and a gunman. I didn't think. You could have died. Min Jae's voice was fracturing. You could have died, Nia. Do you understand that? If Jinho had been 1 second slower. But he wasn't. That's not the point. Min Jae's composure shattered completely. The point is you didn't even hesitate. You just threw yourself in front of him like your life doesn't matter. His life matters more. Not to me. The words came out broken, desperate. Not to me. Nia's breath caught. Min Jae crossed the room in 3 strides, and suddenly he was right there, his hands framing her face, his forehead pressed against hers. When Jinho radioed that there was gunfire near Seo Jun's room, his voice cracked. I've never been that terrified in my life. And then he told me you were there. That you'd gotten to him first. That you'd protected him. Min Jae. I can't lose you. His hands were trembling against her skin. I can't. Do you understand? I can't watch another woman He stopped, the unfinished sentence hanging between them. Another woman I love. The words he couldn't quite say. But Nia heard them anyway. I'm okay, she whispered. We're both okay. This time. But next time. There won't be a next time. You don't know that. In my world, there's always a next time. Always another threat. Another enemy. Another reason to be afraid. Then maybe, Nia said carefully, you need to change your world. Min-jae pulled back just enough to look at her, and what she saw in his eyes stole her breath. Longing, fear, love. All of it tangled together in a way that made her heart ache. I don't know how, he admitted. This is all I know. Control, power, fear. I don't know how to be anything else. Yes, you do. Nia's hands came up to rest against his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath her palms. You know how to be Seo Jun's father. You know how to be loyal. You know how to defend people you care about. I know how to care about you. The confession escaped him like something he'd been holding back for too long. I know I'm falling in love with you, and it terrifies me because I don't know how to keep you safe from this life. From my family. From me. The world tilted. Min-jae. Don't. His thumb brushed her cheek. Don't say anything. Not yet. Just, let me say this. Because I need you to know. Before everything gets more complicated. Before my mother makes good on her threats. Before reality crashes back in. Nia's heart was hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. You walked into my house a month ago, and you changed everything. The way Seo Jun smiles now. The way this cold, dead place feels like it might be a home again. The way He stopped, his jaw working. The way I look at the cameras now, and instead of seeing threats, I see hope. I see you, Nia. Not the caretaker. Not the employee. You. And I can't unsee it. Can't go back to pretending you're just someone who works for me. Tears were streaming down Nia's face. So tell me, Min-jae whispered, his eyes searching hers desperately. Tell me I'm not alone in this. Tell me you feel it too. Nia knew she should be careful. Should think about her job, her visa, all the very real consequences of what he was asking. But she was done being careful. Done shrinking herself. Done pretending she didn't feel what she felt. You're not alone, she said, her voice shaking but sure. I feel it too. All of it. Even though I know I shouldn't. Even though your mother wants me gone, and your family will never accept me. Even though loving you could cost me everything. Loving me. She'd said it. Out loud. No taking it back now. Yes, Nia whispered. Loving you. Something broke in Min-jae's expression. And then he was kissing her. Desperate and tender and fierce all at once. His hands in her hair, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer like she could merge their bodies through sheer force of will. It was nothing like she'd imagined. It was better. It was terrifying. It was everything. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Min-jae rested his forehead against hers again. I can't promise this will be easy, he said. I know. I can't promise my family won't try to destroy you. I know. I can't even promise I know what I'm doing. I know that too. Nia smiled through her tears. But I'm choosing this anyway. Choosing you. Choosing us. Min-jae kissed her again, softer this time. Like a promise. Like a beginning. They stayed in the safe room for another 20 minutes, holding each other, whispering confessions in the dark. When they finally emerged, reality was waiting. Jinho's face was carefully neutral as he reported the breach had been contained. 3 intruders, all captured. No casualties on their side. But Nia saw the way his eyes flicked between her and Min-jae. Saw the moment he understood what had happened in that room. And she saw something else in his expression. Worry. Because loving Kang Min-jae wasn't just complicated. In his world, it was dangerous. And somewhere in the house, in her own quarters, Min Jae's mother was already making phone calls, already planning her next move, already deciding exactly how to eliminate the threat that Nia Carter posed to her family's bloodline. The walls had fallen tonight. But the war was just beginning, and Nia had no idea if love would be enough to survive it. For 3 days after the security breach, Nia lived in a dream. Min Jae would find her in the garden while Seo Jun napped. They'd steal moments in his study after dinner, talking until midnight about everything and nothing. He'd kiss her in doorways when no one was looking, his hands gentle in her hair, like she was something precious he was afraid to break. For 3 perfect, impossible days, Nia let herself believe it could work, that love could be enough, that they could build something real in the wreckage of his world. And then his mother came back. Nia knew something was wrong the moment she saw the cars. 4 black sedans in the circular drive. Security detail she didn't recognize. And Madame Kong standing at the entrance like a queen returning to reclaim her throne. She'd brought reinforcements. Min Jae's uncle, 2 cousins Nia had never met, and a man in an expensive suit who looked like he belonged in a corporate boardroom, not a mafia boss's estate. "Stay with Seo Jun," Min Jae told her, his face unreadable. "Don't come out of his room until I come get you." "Min Jae, what's happening?" "Please, Nia. Just trust me. Stay with my son." He left before she could ask anything else. And Nia stood in the hallway, her stomach churning with dread, knowing that whatever was about to happen would change everything. She didn't stay in Seo Jun's room. She couldn't. Instead, she found herself standing at the top of the stairs, hidden in the shadows, listening to voices carry up from Min Jae's study. His mother's voice. Sharp and angry. "You've been seen with her, Min Jae. Multiple times. The staff talks. Your security team talks. Half of Seoul's underworld is whispering about how Kong Min Jae has taken up with his son's black caretaker." "That's enough, mother." "Is it? Because from where I'm standing, you've lost your mind. Again." "Don't." "Don't what?" "Compare her to Ji-hyun." "Why not?" "You made the same mistake twice. Fell for someone completely inappropriate. Someone who doesn't understand our world. Someone who will get herself killed just like." The sound of something slamming, a fist on a desk, maybe, cut her off. Ji-hyun's death was an accident. Min Jae's voice was dangerous. "Don't you dare use her to manipulate me. I'm trying to save you from yourself." His mother's composure cracked. "Do you have any idea what the other families are saying? What the syndicate leaders think about you keeping that woman in your house? They see it as weakness, Min Jae. They see you distracted, compromised." "I don't care what they see." "Well, you should. Because the Busan clan has already made inquiries. They're testing your resolve. And if they think you're vulnerable, if they think your attention is divided, they will strike." Nia's blood ran cold. The man in the suit spoke for the first time. His voice was calm, measured, lethal. "Mr. Kong, I represent the Syndicate's Advisory Council. We've been monitoring the situation with growing concern. I didn't ask for your monitoring. Nevertheless, we have a responsibility to ensure leadership stability. And right now, your relationship with Miss Carter represents a significant liability. How I conduct my personal life is none of the Council's business." "It becomes our business," the man continued smoothly, "when it threatens the organization's integrity. When it makes you a target. When it puts deals worth hundreds of millions of won at risk because our partners question your judgment." "My judgment is fine." "Is it?" "Because 6 months ago, you would never have allowed a security breach like the one last week. You would never have been distracted enough to miss the warning signs. But now, enough." Madame Kang's voice cut through. "We're not here to debate. We're here to present reality. Min Jae, you have a choice to make." Nia's hands gripped the banister. "End this relationship with Miss Carter," his mother continued. "Send her away. Return your focus to the family business. And we'll handle the damage control with the other families. We'll smooth things over. Restore confidence." "And if I refuse?" The silence that followed was devastating. Then the council will vote to remove you from leadership, the suited man said. We'll install your cousin as interim head. You'll retain a ceremonial position, but you'll have no real power. No protection for Seo Jun. No control over the syndicate your father built. You can't do that. We can. And we will. The votes are already secured. Another silence. Longer this time. When Min Jae spoke again, his voice was hollow. How long do I have? To decide. 48 hours. His mother's tone softened slightly. Min Jae, please. I know you care about her. But this is bigger than one woman. This is about legacy. About survival. About protecting Seo Jun's future. By taking away the one person who's made him happy? By ensuring he has a future at all. Nia didn't wait to hear more. She ran back to her room, her heart pounding, her mind racing. They were going to make him choose. Her or everything. Love or legacy. And she already knew which one he'd pick. She'd seen it before. With her ex. With every man who'd promised to stand by her and then folded the moment things got hard. She was always the one who got sacrificed. Always the one deemed not worth the fight. But God, she'd thought Min Jae was different. She'd thought. A knock on her door made her jump. Nia. It's me. Min Jae's voice. Quiet. Strained. She didn't want to open the door. Didn't want to see whatever was written on his face. But she did anyway. He looked destroyed. We need to talk, he said. And Nia knew. Before he said another word. Before he opened his mouth. She knew. I'm listening. Min Jae stepped into her room, closing the door behind him. He wouldn't meet her eyes. That was the first sign. The situation has become complicated. Complicated. The word tasted bitter. That's one way to put it. My family, the syndicate, they're concerned about our relationship. Our relationship. Nia crossed her arms, trying to hold herself together. Is that what we're calling it? Nia, please. This isn't easy for me. Then don't do it. She heard the desperation in her own voice and hated it. Whatever you came here to say, don't. I have to. Min Jae finally looked at her, and the anguish in his eyes almost broke her. I have to protect you. And Seo Jun. And the only way to do that is to what? Push me away. Pretend the last month didn't happen. It's not pretending. It's survival. For who? You. Your empire. Nia felt tears burning. Because it's not survival for me, Min Jae. It's betrayal. I'm trying to keep you safe. I don't need you to keep me safe. The words exploded out of her. I need you to keep your promises. You said you'd fight for this. You said you'd choose differently this time. You said. She stopped, her voice breaking. Min Jae's hands clenched at his sides. They'll destroy you, Nia. My family. The syndicate. They'll dig into your past. Revoke your visa. Make sure you never work in Korea again. They'll make your life hell until you break. So you're breaking me first? Is that supposed to be better? It's supposed to be mercy. It's cowardice. The word hung between them like a slap. Min Jae flinched. I'm trying to protect you. No. Nia's voice was shaking now. You're trying to protect yourself. From having to make the hard choice. From having to stand up to your family. From having to be the man you promised you'd be. That's not fair. Fair. Nia laughed, bitter and broken. You want to talk about fair? You pulled me into this. You made me fall in love with you. You made me believe I was worth fighting for. And now you're standing here telling me I'm not. You are worth fighting for. Then fight. The tears were falling freely now. Fight for me, Min Jae. Tell your family no. Tell the syndicate you don't care. Choose me. Choose us. Choose. I can't. The words fell like stones. I can't, Min Jae repeated, his voice breaking. I wish I could. God, I wish I was strong enough. But I can't lose my son. Can't risk his future. Can't. You already chose. Nia's voice was hollow now. That's why you're here. You already decided, and you just came to deliver the verdict. Min Jae didn't deny it. And that was answer enough. I think it's best, Min Jae said, each word clearly costing him, if we maintain a professional distance from now on. You'll continue to care for Seo Jun. I'm not taking that away from either of you. But we can't. We can't be what we were. Professional distance. Nia wanted to laugh. Or scream. Or both. Is that what we're calling this? I'm sorry. Don't. She held up a hand. Don't apologize like this is something happening to you. You're making a choice, Min Jae. Own it. I'm making the only choice I have. No. You're making the easy choice. The safe choice. The choice that lets you keep your power and your control and your perfect little empire. Nia's voice hardened. But you know what? You were right about one thing. What? You are just like your family. Cold. Calculating. Willing to sacrifice anyone who doesn't fit into your world. She looked at him with all the hurt she felt. I just wish I'd seen it sooner. Min Jae looked like she'd stabbed him. Good. Nia thought savagely. Let him hurt. Let him know what it feels like to be disposable. I should go, he said quietly. Yeah, you should. He moved toward the door, then stopped, his hand on the handle. For what it's worth, he said without turning around. I meant everything I said. About falling for you. About wanting this. About. It's not worth anything. Nia's voice was flat. Words without actions are just noise, Min Jae. And you're making a lot of noise. He left without another word. And Nia stood alone in her room, staring at the closed door, feeling something inside her shatter. She'd been here before. Different man. Different country. Same ending. Always the same ending. She wasn't enough. Would never be enough. Not when it came down to the choice. The cameras in the corners of her room blinked their steady red lights, recording everything. Recording her break. Recording the moment she realized that loving Kang Min Jae was the worst mistake she'd ever made. What Nia didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that Min Jae was standing on the other side of that door. His forehead pressed against the wood. His hands shaking. His heart shattering with every breath. She'd called him a coward. And she was right. Because the truth was, he wasn't protecting her from his family. He was protecting himself from the terror of losing another woman he loved. From the possibility that choosing her would end the same way choosing Ji-hyun had ended. In death. In grief. In failure. And Min Jae was so afraid of that pain, so paralyzed by the memory of it, that he was destroying the best thing in his life before fate could do it for him. He was a coward. And by the time he realized it, by the time he understood what he'd thrown away, it would be too late. But that realization wouldn't come for months. Not until he watched surveillance footage he was never supposed to see. Not until he understood that the greatest threat to Nia hadn't been his family at all. It had been him. For now, he just stood outside her door, listening to her cry, and hated himself. Hated his choices. Hated his weakness. And wondered if this was what hell felt like. Loving someone enough to let them go. And knowing you'd destroyed them in the process. Nia stared at the 2 pink lines on the pregnancy test and felt her entire world tilt. Pregnant. She was pregnant. With Min Jae's child. The man who'd looked her in the eye 3 weeks ago and chosen his empire over her. The man who now passed her in hallways without speaking. The man who watched his son through cameras instead of entering the room when she was there. The man she still loved despite every reason not to. Her hands were shaking so badly the test clattered into the sink. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. But the nausea that had plagued her for the past week said otherwise. The exhaustion that made her want to sleep 16 hours a day. The way her breasts ached and her emotions swung wildly between rage and grief. All of it suddenly made terrible, perfect sense. And Nia had absolutely no idea what to do. She couldn't tell him. That was her first thought. Her instinct. her survival mechanism kicking in. Because telling Min Jae meant giving him power, meant watching him make another choice, meant risking that he'd see their child as a problem to be managed instead of a life to be cherished. She'd been that problem once. With her ex in Chicago. When she told him she might be pregnant, a false alarm thankfully, and watched his face transform from love to panic to cold calculation. We're not ready for this. You need to handle it. Handle it. Like she was a situation. A crisis. Something to be eliminated. She'd left him the next day. And now, staring at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, Nia wondered if history was about to repeat itself. If she'd once again fallen for a man who would choose convenience over commitment. But this time, there was no false alarm. This time, the baby was real. And Nia had to decide what that meant for her future. She lasted 4 days before she knew she had to tell him. Not because she wanted his permission. Not because she needed his approval. But because he deserved to know. Even if he'd broken her heart. Even if he'd chosen wrong. Even if the sight of him still made her chest ache with everything she'd lost. He was still this baby's father. And Nia wouldn't take that from him, no matter how badly he'd hurt her. So on Thursday evening, after Seo Jun went to bed, she knocked on Min Jae's study door. Come in. His voice was neutral. Professional. Empty. Nia pushed open the door to find him sitting at his desk, surrounded by papers, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Good, she thought viciously. Let him suffer too. I need to talk to you, she said. Min Jae looked up, and something flickered in his expression. Longing, maybe. Or regret. Is it about Seo Jun? No. It's about us. There is no us, Nia. We discussed this. I'm pregnant. The words fell into the room like a bomb. Min Jae went absolutely still. His face drained of color. What? I'm pregnant. About 6 weeks, I think. From before. Her voice cracked. Before you decided I wasn't worth fighting for. Min Jae stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Nia. I'm not asking you for anything. She forced the words out. I'm not asking you to choose me again. I'm not asking you to fix this. You deserve to know. Deserve to know. Min Jae's voice was hollow. You're carrying my child and you think I just deserve to know? What else is there? You made your choice, Min Jae. Your family. Your syndicate. Your bloodline. She touched her stomach instinctively. This doesn't change any of that. It changes everything. Does it? Because from where I'm standing, this just becomes another complication. Another thing for your mother to manage. Another threat to the precious Kong legacy. Min Jae looked at her like she'd struck him. You think I'd see our child as a threat? I don't know what you'd see. I don't know you anymore. The truth of it hung between them. They'd had 3 perfect days. 3 days of stolen kisses and whispered promises. 3 days of believing love could be enough. And then he'd thrown it all away. Now they were strangers again. Strangers with a baby on the way. Before Min Jae could respond, the door burst open. Madame Kong stood in the doorway, her face a mask of cold fury. Behind her stood the man in the suit from before. And Jin Ho, looking stricken. I'm sorry, sir, Jin Ho said. I tried to stop them. It's true then. Madame Kang's eyes were ice. The caretaker is pregnant. Nia's blood ran cold. How did you? I have eyes everywhere in this house, Miss Carter. Including the staff member you confided in about buying a pregnancy test. She turned to Min Jae. Did you know about this? I just found out. How convenient. His mother's voice dripped with venom. And now she's trapped you. Exactly as I predicted. Mother, that's not. Isn't it? A foreign woman with no connections and nothing to offer suddenly finds herself pregnant by one of Korea's most powerful men? Tell me, Miss Carter, did you plan this from the beginning? Is this why you came to our house? The accusation was a knife to the chest. How dare you, Nia started. How dare I? Madam Kong moved into the room like a predator stalking prey. You're the one who seduced my son, who disrupted our household, who has now created a scandal that could destroy everything we've built. I didn't seduce anyone. Didn't you? You came into this house with your soft words and your exotic looks and your calculated vulnerability. You made my grandson dependent on you. You made my son believe he could have a life outside his responsibilities. And now, she looked at Nia's stomach with disgust. Now you've gotten yourself pregnant to secure your position. That's not what happened. Nia's voice broke. I love him. I loved. She stopped, realizing her mistake. Past tense. Because whatever she'd felt for Min Jae, it was buried under layers of hurt now. Love. Madam Kong laughed, bitter and cruel. You don't love my son. You love what he can give you. Security. Money. Status. Mother, enough. Min Jae's voice was quiet but dangerous. But his mother wasn't finished. She turned to the suited man. Tell them. The man stepped forward, pulling an envelope from his jacket. Miss Carter, we've prepared a severance package. 500 million won. Enough to return to America, establish yourself, and provide for your child comfortably. Nia's mind reeled. 500 million won. Nearly $500,000. They were buying her off. In exchange, the man continued, you'll sign a non-disclosure agreement. You'll make no claim of paternity. You'll have no contact with the Kong family. The child will have no legal rights to the Kong name or estate. You want me to pretend this baby doesn't exist? Nia's voice was shaking. To walk away and never tell my child who their father is? We're offering you freedom, Miss Carter, and financial security. Most women in your position would consider that generous. Most women, Nia couldn't finish. The rage was choking her. She looked at Min Jae. Say something. Tell them this is insane. Tell them. But Min Jae was staring at the floor, not meeting her eyes, not defending her, not fighting. And in that silence, Nia understood. He was going to let this happen. He was going to let his family buy her off and erase his own child. Because it was easier than fighting, easier than choosing, easier than being the man she'd thought he could be. I need to think about this, Nia heard herself say. You have 24 hours, Madam Kong said. After that, we'll pursue other legal remedies to ensure you're removed from Korea permanently. They left. All of them. Even Jin Ho, though he looked back at her with something like pity. And then it was just Nia and Min Jae. Say something, she whispered. Min Jae finally looked at her. And what she saw in his eyes destroyed her. Not anger. Not love. Defeat. Maybe it's for the best, he said quietly. For the best. Nia's voice cracked. Our child doesn't exist to you? I don't exist. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Because it sounds like you're agreeing with them. Like you want me gone. I want you safe. Liar. The word came out broken. You want me gone because I'm inconvenient. Because loving me is hard and you're too much of a coward to try. Nia. I was going to stay, you know. Tears were streaming down her face now. Even after you broke my heart. I was going to stay and raise this baby near you. Let you be part of their life. Because I thought, God, I was so stupid. I thought deep down you were a good man who'd made a scared choice. I am trying to protect you. Stop saying that. Nia's voice rose. You keep saying you're protecting me, but all you're doing is abandoning me. Just like you abandoned us. Just like you abandoned every promise you ever made. She moved toward the door, then stopped. I'll take their money. And I'll sign their papers. And I'll leave Korea. Relief flashed across Min Jae's face, and it gutted her. But I want you to know something, Nia continued, her voice steady now despite the tears. This baby will know they were wanted. They'll know they're loved. They'll know they matter. She looked at him one last time. Everything you should have told me. But didn't. Nia left Korea 4 days later. She signed the papers, took the money, packed her single suitcase. Seo-jun cried when she said goodbye, held onto her so tightly she thought her heart would break. "You promised you wouldn't leave," he sobbed. "I know, baby. I know. I'm so sorry." "Is it because of grandmother? Because of what she said?" Nia knelt down, even though it hurt to move. "It's because sometimes adults make things too complicated. And sometimes the best thing to do is start over somewhere new." "Will I ever see you again?" She wanted to say yes. Wanted to promise. But she'd learned that promises in the Kong household were worth nothing. "I hope so," she said instead. And meant it. Min Jae didn't come to say goodbye. She saw him watching from the window of his study as her car pulled away. Saw the way his hand pressed against the glass. Saw the moment he realized what he'd done. But by then it was too late. The car turned the corner, and the Kong estate disappeared behind her. And Nia let herself cry. For the love she'd lost. For the family Seo-jun would never have. For the child growing inside her who would never know their father. And for herself, the girl who kept believing in men who weren't brave enough to choose her. 6 months later, Nia gave birth to a daughter in a Chicago hospital. She was perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, and her father's dark eyes. Nia named her Maya. It meant illusion in Sanskrit. Because that's what love with Min Jae had been. An illusion. A beautiful, devastating illusion. But Maya was real. Maya was hers. And Nia made a promise as she held her newborn daughter. "I will never let anyone make you feel like you're not worth fighting for. You will always be chosen. Always be wanted. Always be loved." The promises Min Jae should have made. But never did. And back in Korea, in a house full of cameras and empty rooms, Min Jae sat in his surveillance room, watching footage of Nia that he'd saved before she left. Watching her laugh with Seo-jun. Watching her place her hand on her stomach, a gesture he hadn't understood at the time but now haunted him. She'd been carrying his child. His daughter. And he'd let her go. He told himself it was for the best. Safer for Nia. Simpler for everyone. But late at night, when he couldn't sleep, he knew the truth. He'd chosen wrong. And somewhere in America, his daughter was being born. Without him. Without his name. Without his love. And Min Jae had no one to blame but himself. Min Jae found the deleted footage by accident. 6 months after Nia left. 6 months of Seo-jun's silent grief. 6 months of his mother's satisfied smiles and his own hollow existence. 6 months of telling himself he'd made the right choice. He'd been reviewing security protocols after another syndicate threat when he noticed something odd. A gap in the backup files. 3 days of footage from Nia's final week, completely erased from the main server. But Min Jae's system had redundancies. Triple backups stored on encrypted drives that only he could access. His mother didn't know about those. And when he pulled up the recovered files, his entire world shattered. The first video was time-stamped 2 days before Nia left. She was in her room, sitting on the edge of her bed, holding a pregnancy test. Min Jae watched as she stared at those 2 pink lines, watched her hand tremble as she set it down, watched her face crumple as the reality hit her. Pregnant. She'd been pregnant when his mother confronted them. He'd known that, of course. Nia had told him. But seeing it, seeing the moment she'd first discovered it, alone in her windowless room, made it visceral in a way that hollowed him out. But it was the next video that destroyed him. Camera 8. The hallway outside his study. Timestamp. 2 hours before his mother had, coincidentally, walked in on their conversation. Min Jae watched as his mother approached Mrs. Choi, the head housekeeper, in the corridor. "Has she taken the test yet?" his mother asked. Mrs. Choi nodded. "This morning. Positive. Good. Alert me the moment she tries to tell Min Jae. We need to control this situation before it spirals. And if she doesn't tell him, she will. Women like her always think honesty will save them." His mother's smile was cruel. "That's when we move. Have the papers ready. And make sure the security staff understands. If she refuses to leave quietly, We'll have her visa revoked for security concerns. Min Jae's hands were shaking. His mother had known. She'd known before he did. And she'd planned the entire confrontation. He forced himself to keep watching. The next file showed his mother's private office, 3 hours after Nia had signed the papers. The suited man, the syndicate's lawyer, sat across from her, reviewing documents. "Everything is in order," he said. "Miss Carter has signed the NDA. The wire transfer will process tomorrow. She'll be on a flight to Chicago by week's end." "And the pregnancy?" She agreed to all terms. No paternity claim. No contact with the family. The child will have no legal connection to the Kong name. Madam Kong nodded, satisfied. "And my son believes it was his decision. That he's protecting her. Perfect." She poured herself tea, her movements elegant and cold. Men are so predictable. Give them the illusion of control, let them think they're being noble, and they'll destroy their own happiness to feel like heroes. The lawyer hesitated. "Ma'am, with respect." Miss Carter seemed genuinely heartbroken. "And the boy, Seo Jun, he's been asking for her constantly." "Seo Jun will forget. Children are resilient." "And if Min Jae finds out you orchestrated this?" His mother's expression hardened. "He won't. I've erased all evidence. And even if he did, what would he do? Leave the syndicate? Abandon his responsibilities? He's too much like his father for that. Too controlled by duty." She was wrong. God, she was so wrong. But Min Jae didn't know that yet as he sat in his surveillance room, watching his mother dismantle his life with surgical precision. The next recording broke him completely. Camera 14. Seo Jun's bedroom. The night before Nia left. Min Jae watched as Nia slipped into his son's room after midnight. Seo Jun was asleep, his small face peaceful in the dim glow of his nightlight. Nia knelt beside the bed and started whispering. The audio was faint, but Min Jae had the system enhanced. Every word came through with devastating clarity. "I'm so sorry, baby." Her voice was thick with tears. "I'm so sorry I have to leave you. I promised I'd stay, and I'm breaking that promise, and you're going to hate me for it." She touched Seo Jun's hair gently. "Your dad, he's a good man. I know he doesn't seem like it right now. I know he's scared and broken and hiding behind his walls. But deep down, he loves you so much. More than anything in this world." A pause. A shuddering breath. "I'm going to have a baby. Your baby sister. And God, I wish she could grow up knowing you. I wish she could have a big brother who would protect her and make her laugh and teach her how to be brave." Nia's voice cracked. "But sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes the people we love make choices that break us. And we have to learn to live with the pieces." She leaned down, pressing a kiss to Seo Jun's forehead. "Be kind, Seo Jun. Be braver than your father. Choose love over fear. Choose people over power. Choose." Her voice broke completely. "Choose to be different." She stood, wiping her eyes. "I love you, baby. I'll always love you. Even if you forget me." Then she left. And Min Jae watched his son sleep, unaware that the woman who'd saved him had just said goodbye forever. Min Jae had to stop the video. Had to stand. Had to breathe. But his lungs wouldn't work. A baby sister. Nia had told Seo Jun he had a baby sister. Which meant his daughter was born. Somewhere in America, Nia had given birth to his child. His daughter. And he'd missed it. Missed everything. Because he'd been a coward. Because he'd trusted his mother. Because he'd chosen control over love. There were more videos. Hours of them. His mother meeting with syndicate leaders, convincing them Nia was a security risk. His uncle coaching the household staff on what to say about Nia's inappropriate behavior. The lawyer drafting increasingly aggressive contracts to ensure Nia could never return. Every step documented. Every manipulation preserved. And in the center of it all, his mother, orchestrating everything with cold precision. The same way she'd orchestrated his wife's isolation. The same way she'd made Ji-hyun's life unbearable until she'd tried to leave. The same pattern. The same cruelty. And Min Jae had let it happen. Twice. He'd let his mother destroy 2 women he loved. Because it was easier than fighting. Easier than choosing. Easier than being the man they deserved. The final video was timestamped 1 week after Nia left. Camera 7. The garden. Seo-jun sat under the cherry tree, exactly where Nia used to read to him. He was holding one of her books, the one she'd left behind. And he was crying. Silent, heartbroken tears streaming down his 6-year-old face. "Please come back," he whispered to no one. "Please. I'll be better. I'll be good. Just please come back." Min Jae watched his son break. Watched him grieve. Watched him learn, at 6 years old, that the people you love leave you. And Min Jae understood with blinding clarity what he'd done. He hadn't protected Seo-jun. He'd taught him that love was conditional. That people were disposable. That safety meant loneliness. He'd done to his son exactly what his own father had done to him. And the cycle would continue unless someone was brave enough to break it. Min Jae stood in the surveillance room as dawn broke over Seoul. The evidence was spread across 12 monitors. Months of manipulation. Months of lies. Months of his mother controlling his life while he convinced himself he was in control. He'd spent years installing cameras to keep threats out. But the real threat had been inside his house all along. Inside his family. Inside himself. His phone rang. His mother. "Min Jae, we need to discuss the merger with the Busan faction. Can you meet this afternoon?" Her voice was pleasant. Professional. Completely normal. Like she hadn't destroyed his life. Like she hadn't stolen his daughter. Like she hadn't turned him into the kind of man who abandoned the woman he loved. "No," Min Jae said quietly. "I'm sorry. I said no, Mother. I can't meet this afternoon. Or any afternoon after that." Silence. Then, "What are you talking about?" "I found the footage. All of it. I know what you did." He heard her sharp intake of breath. "Min Jae, I can explain. You manipulated me. You orchestrated Nia's departure. You erased evidence. You lied to my face for 6 months while my daughter was born on the other side of the world. I was protecting you. You were controlling me. The same way you controlled Father. The same way you controlled Ji-hyun until she couldn't take it anymore. How dare you?" "No." Min Jae's voice was steel. "How dare you? You destroyed my marriage. You contributed to my wife's death. And now you've stolen my daughter's first 6 months of life. You're being dramatic. I'm being honest. For the first time in my life, I'm seeing clearly. And what I see is a woman so terrified of losing control that she's willing to sacrifice her own son's happiness to maintain her power. Min Jae, you need to think about what you're saying." "I have thought about it. For 6 months. And I've made my decision." He took a breath. "I'm leaving the syndicate." The silence on the other end was absolute. "You can't," his mother said finally. "You have responsibilities. Obligations. The family. The family destroyed everything I loved. So I'm done with it. And do what? Run off to America chasing some woman who probably hates you?" "Yes. She took the money, Min Jae. She signed the papers. She wanted to leave. Because you gave her no choice. Because I gave her no choice." His voice cracked. "But I'm choosing differently now. I'm choosing her. I'm choosing my daughter. I'm choosing to be the man I should have been 6 months ago. You'll lose everything. Your position. Your power. I've already lost everything that mattered." He hung up. And for the first time in his life, Min Jae felt free. Terrified. Devastated. Drowning in regret. But free. Jin-ho found him an hour later, still sitting in the surveillance room. "Sir, your mother is calling an emergency family meeting. The syndicate leaders are being summoned. They're going to try to strip your authority. Let them." Jin-ho stared at him. "Sir." I'm leaving, Jin-ho. Tonight. I need you to handle the transition. My cousin can take over leadership. You're serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. Where will you go? Chicago. To find Nia. To meet my daughter. To... Min-jae's voice broke. To beg for forgiveness I probably don't deserve. Jin-ho was quiet for a long moment. Then, I'll have the jet prepared. And sir. Yes. It's about time. Min-jae spent his last night in Seoul in Seo-jun's room. His son was asleep, peaceful for once. Min-jae knelt beside the bed, running a hand through his hair. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm sorry I failed you. I'm sorry I let her go. I'm sorry I taught you all the wrong lessons about love. Seo-jun stirred, his eyes opening slightly. Appa. I'm here, buddy. Are you leaving too? The question was a knife to the heart. Only for a little while. I need to find someone. Someone important. Nia. Min-jae's breath caught. You remember her. I remember everything. I remember how she made you smile. How you looked at her like she was magic. She was magic. Is magic. And I let her go because I was scared. Seo-jun sat up, suddenly looking far older than his 7 years. Are you going to bring her back? I'm going to try. Even if it takes forever. Even if she never forgives me. I'm going to try. What if she says no? Then I'll keep trying. Because that's what you do when you love someone. Seo-jun. You don't give up. You don't choose fear. You fight. His son hugged him then, small arms wrapped tight. Bring my sister home too, he whispered. Please. And Min-jae made a promise he intended to keep. I will. I promise. This time I won't fail. 24 hours later, Min-jae landed in Chicago. He had an address, tracked down through private investigators and favors he'd called in from American contacts. He had a plan, or the beginning of one. What he didn't have was confidence that Nia would even open the door. That she'd listen. That she'd give him a chance to explain the inexplicable. But as he stood outside a modest apartment building on the south side, staring up at a window where he could see a light burning, Min-jae knew one thing for certain. He was done watching from a distance. Done hiding behind cameras and fear and excuses. It was time to show up. Time to fight. Time to become the man Nia had believed he could be. Even if he was 6 months too late. Even if she hated him. Even if his daughter would never know his name. He'd spend the rest of his life trying to earn what he'd thrown away. Starting now. Min-jae took a breath. And knocked on the door. The apartment door opened. And Min-jae forgot how to breathe. Nia stood in the doorway wearing sweatpants and an oversized t-shirt, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked exhausted, beautiful, alive. And cradled against her chest was a baby. His daughter. 6 months old. Dark curls. Skin the perfect blend of both of them. Sleeping peacefully, her tiny fist curled against Nia's collarbone. Min-jae's daughter. The baby he'd never met. Never held. Never told he wanted. And he felt something crack wide open in his chest. Nia's eyes went from surprise to fury in half a second. No. She moved to close the door, but Min-jae's hand shot out, holding it open. Nia, please. I said no. Her voice was shaking. You don't get to show up here. You don't get to. She looked down at the baby, then back at him. How did you even find me? Private investigator. Contacts in immigration. He stopped, seeing the fear flash across her face. I'm not here to threaten you. I'm not here to take her. I needed to see you. To explain. Explain what? How you chose your empire over us. How you let your mother buy me off like I was nothing. How you let 6 months go by without a single word. Each accusation hit like a physical blow. You're right. About all of it. I failed you. I failed our daughter. His voice cracked. I found the footage, Nia. The deleted files. I know what my mother did. I know how she manipulated everything. I know. I don't care what you know. Nia's eyes were blazing now. You stood there and let it happen. You watched me sign those papers. You let me believe you didn't want us. I thought I was protecting you. Stop saying that. The baby stirred at her raised voice, and Nia immediately softened, rocking gently. Stop hiding behind that excuse. You were protecting yourself, Min Jae, from having to choose, from having to be brave. The truth of it gutted him. You're right, he said quietly. I was a coward. I let fear make my decisions. I let my mother control me. I let you walk away carrying my child because it was easier than fighting. So why are you here now? Because I can't live with it anymore. Because every day without you, without her, is torture. Because I'm done choosing fear over love. Nia laughed, bitter and broken. 6 months too late. I know. She's already 6 months old, Min Jae. She's smiling, starting to sit up. She has a personality. And you've missed all of it. I know. You don't get to just show up and be a father now. That's not how this works. I know that too. Min Jae took a shaking breath. I'm not asking to be let back into your life. I'm not asking for forgiveness I don't deserve. I'm asking for a chance. Any chance. To be part of her life. To prove I can be different. Nia stared at him for a long moment. What did you mean when you said you found the footage? They ended up in her small living room. Nia sat on the couch, the baby, Maya, she told him her name was Maya, sleeping in a bassinet nearby. Min Jae sat in the chair across from her, as far away as the tiny apartment allowed. And he told her everything. The deleted files. His mother's manipulation. The recordings of Nia crying alone. The video of her saying goodbye to Seo Jun. Every word felt like glass in his throat. When he finished, Nia was crying silently. She planned all of it? Her voice was barely a whisper. Yes. From the moment she found out you were pregnant. She orchestrated everything to make you leave. And you believed her. You believed I was a threat. A problem to be eliminated. No. I believed I was doing the right thing. I believed. He stopped. I believed what I wanted to believe. That letting you go was noble instead of cowardly. That I was protecting you instead of abandoning you. You were supposed to fight for me. Nia's voice broke. You said you'd be different this time. You said. I lied. To both of us. Min Jae's hands clenched. I told myself I was being strong, but I was just being my father's son. Choosing duty over love. Choosing control over truth. Choosing everything except the one thing that mattered. And what was that? You. Us. The family we could have been. Nia wiped her eyes. Past tense. It doesn't have to be. Yes, it does. She looked at him with devastation in her eyes. Because even if I wanted to forgive you, even if I could get past the betrayal and the pain and the 6 months of raising our daughter alone, how do I trust you again? How do I believe you won't run the next time things get hard? It was the question Min Jae had been asking himself for 3 days. Since he'd walked away from his family, his syndicate, his entire life. And he only had one answer. I left everything, he said quietly. Nia's head snapped up. What? The syndicate. My position. My family. I walked away from all of it. You're lying. I'm not. I resigned. Gave my cousin control. Told my mother I was done being her puppet. He met her eyes. My empire is probably crumbling as we speak. There will be territorial disputes, power struggles, maybe even war between the factions. Then why are you here instead of there? Because none of it matters without you. Nia stared at him like he'd grown a second head. You're telling me you abandoned a criminal empire, something your family built for generations, to come to Chicago and what? Play house. I'm telling you I finally made the right choice. 6 months too late. But I made it. You're insane. Probably. But I'm also serious. Min-jae leaned forward. I don't want power, Nia. I don't want control. I don't want any of it if it means living without you and Maya. At the sound of her name, the baby stirred. And Min-jae watched as Nia automatically reached into the bassinet, lifting Maya with practiced ease. Watched as his daughter, opened her eyes and looked up at her mother with complete trust. The sight broke something in him. Can I? His voice cracked. Can I hold her? Nia hesitated. He could see the war in her eyes. The part that wanted to protect her daughter from the man who'd abandoned them. And the part that knew Maya deserved to know her father. Finally, slowly, she nodded. Nia stood, crossing the small space between them. Support her head, she instructed, her voice clinical. Professional. Like this. She placed Maya in his arms, and Min-jae felt his entire world shift. She was so small, so perfect, so utterly defenseless. Her eyes, dark like his, blinked up at him with curious innocence. She didn't know who he was. Didn't know he'd failed her before she was even born. She just saw a stranger. And Min-jae felt tears slide down his face for the first time in 15 years. Hello, Maya, he whispered in Korean, then English. The word stuck. I'm Min-jae. Not father. He hadn't earned that yet. Maybe he never would. Maya made a small sound, her hand reaching up. Her tiny fingers wrapped around his thumb with surprising strength. And Min-jae understood, with blinding clarity, what he'd been missing. This moment. This connection. This was what mattered. Not power. Not control. Not legacy or bloodlines or any of the things his family had valued. Just this. A baby's hand wrapped around his finger. Trust given freely, without conditions. Love in its purest form. She looks like you, Nia said softly. She looks like you too. She's perfect. She's colicky. And she only sleeps in 3-hour stretches. And sometimes she cries for no reason at all. But Nia's voice was gentle now. Sad. She's not perfect, Min-jae. She's real. And real is messy and hard and I want it anyway. He looked up at Nia, his daughter still cradled in his arms. All of it. The sleepless nights. The crying. The mess. I want to be here for it. For how long? Until your family calls you back? Until you realize being a father is harder than being a boss. Forever. The word came out fierce. Certain. I want to be her father forever. I want to be here when she takes her first steps. Says her first words. Has her first day of school. I want. You left. Nia's voice broke. When it mattered most, you left. How do I know you won't do it again? Because last time, I had something to go back to. An empire. A position. A family who valued power over love. Min-jae looked down at Maya, then back at Nia. I don't have that anymore. I burned it all down. And even if you send me away, even if you never forgive me, I'm not going back. I'm staying in Chicago. I'm going to be part of Maya's life however you'll let me. Even if it's just supervised visits. Even if it's just video calls. I'm staying. Why should I believe you? Because I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to let me prove it. Maya started fussing, and Nia took her back instinctively. Min-jae watched as she bounced the baby gently, murmuring soft words. Watched the way Maya immediately calmed at her mother's touch. Nia had been doing this alone for 6 months. Pregnancy, birth, sleepless nights, first smiles, everything. And he'd missed it. Because he'd been afraid. I don't know if I can do this, Nia said, not looking at him. I don't know if I can let you back in. If I can risk getting hurt again. If I can watch Maya grow attached to you and then lose you when things get complicated. Then don't let me back in. Not yet. Not until I've earned it. And how do you plan to do that? However long it takes. Whatever you need. I'll get an apartment nearby. I'll get a job, a real job, something legal. I'll start over. Build a life here. Prove I'm serious. You don't know how to do anything legal. Then I'll learn. He stood, moving toward the door. I'll learn to be a normal person. To be the kind of father Maya deserves. To be the kind of man you deserved all along. His hand was on the doorknob when Nia spoke. Min-jae. He turned. She was holding Maya against her shoulder, tears streaming down her face. I loved you. So much. And you broke me. I know. I don't know if I can love you again. I know that too. His voice was rough with emotion. But I can love you anyway. I can love Maya. I can show up every day and prove I'm different. Even if you never feel the same way again. Nia was quiet for a long moment. There's a coffee shop 2 blocks from here. Corner of Clark and Belmont. I take Maya there every Tuesday and Thursday morning around 10. Min-jae's heart stopped. Nia. I'm not promising anything. I'm telling you where we'll be. What you do with that information is up to you. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was a chance. And Min-jae would take it. He left before he could say something stupid like, I love you, or thank you, or any of the 1,000 desperate words crowding his throat. Instead, he walked out into the cold Chicago night and let himself feel it. The fear. The hope. The overwhelming weight of what he'd lost and what he might be able to rebuild. He'd given up everything to be here. His power. His family. His entire identity. And standing on a street corner in a city he didn't know, Min-jae realized something profound. He didn't regret it. Not for a second. Because back in that apartment was his daughter. His child. A 6-month-old baby who didn't know him yet, but who he already loved more than his own life. And somewhere in that same apartment was the woman who'd shown him what love could be. If he was brave enough to choose it. If he was strong enough to earn it. If he was patient enough to wait for it. Tuesday. Thursday. 10 a.m. Min-jae pulled out his phone and set a reminder. Then he started walking, looking for a hotel. A place to sleep. A starting point for whatever came next. Behind him, in the apartment window, Nia stood holding Maya. Watching him walk away. Wondering if this time, he'd actually come back. And in her arms, Maya yawned and settled against her mother's chest. Unaware that her father had just traveled halfway around the world to meet her. Unaware that he'd given up everything for a chance. Unaware that the man who'd once trusted only cameras was now trusting in something far more terrifying. Faith. In himself. In second chances. In the possibility that broken things could be healed. One Tuesday morning at a time. Min-jae showed up at the coffee shop on Tuesday at 9:45 a.m. 15 minutes early. Terrified. Holding 2 cups of coffee he'd bought from a different shop because he didn't know what else to do with his hands. He sat at a corner table with a clear view of the door. And waited. At 9:58, he started to panic. Maybe she'd changed her mind. Maybe Tuesday was a test to see if he'd actually show up, and now that he had, she'd avoid him forever. At 10:02, the door opened. And Nia walked in, pushing a stroller, looking tired and beautiful and real. Their eyes met across the coffee shop. And Min-jae forgot how to breathe all over again. She didn't come to his table right away. Instead, she ordered her coffee, something complicated with oat milk and vanilla, and took her time preparing Maya's bottle. Deliberate. Making him wait. Making him understand that this was on her terms now. Finally, she wheeled the stroller over. You came, she said. You thought I wouldn't? I thought you might. I also thought you might realize how hard this would be and disappear again. She sat down, not quite meeting his eyes. Wouldn't be the first time. The words stung. But they were fair. I'm not going anywhere, Nia. We'll see. Maya started fussing, and Nia lifted her from the stroller with practiced ease. The baby was awake now, alert, her dark eyes taking in the unfamiliar man sitting across from her. Min-jae's daughter. Still a stranger to him. It hurt more than any physical wound he'd ever taken. Can I? He stopped himself. Sorry. I shouldn't assume. You were going to ask if you could hold her. Yes. Nia studied him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. She showed him how to support Maya's head properly, how to cradle her against his chest, how to bounce gently when she started to fuss. And Min Jae held his daughter and felt like he was holding the entire world. "Hi, baby girl," he whispered. "It's me again. The word still stuck. It's Min Jae." "You can call yourself her father," Nia said quietly. "That's what you are. Biologically, anyway." "I haven't earned the title yet." "No, you haven't." The honesty was brutal, but it was also a gift. Because it meant Nia wasn't pretending, wasn't sugarcoating, wasn't making this easier than it needed to be. She was giving him the truth. And the truth was that he had to prove himself. Starting now. They sat in silence for a while, Maya dozing in Min Jae's arms. Other customers came and went. The barista called out orders. Life continued around them. But in their corner of the coffee shop, time felt suspended. Finally, Nia spoke. "Why did you really come to Chicago?" "I told you. To be part of Maya's life. To make things right with you. That's the pretty version. I want the truth." She looked at him steadily. "What do you want, Min Jae? Really want?" It was the question he'd been asking himself for days. And there was only one answer. "I want a second chance." At what? At everything. Being a father. Being a partner. Being the man I was too afraid to be 6 months ago. And if I say no, if I tell you that you can see Maya but you and me, we're done forever. The possibility felt like dying. But Min Jae had learned something in the past 6 months. Love wasn't about control. It was about choice. And Nia had every right to choose not to forgive him. "Then I accept it," he said quietly. "I'll be the best father I can be to Maya. I'll show up for every moment you'll let me. And I'll live with the fact that I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me." Just like that. Just like that. Nia's eyes were shining with unshed tears. "You broke my heart, Min Jae. I know. You let me believe I didn't matter. That our baby didn't matter. That I was just another problem to be managed and eliminated. I know. You stood there and watched me sign papers that said I'd never contact you again. That our daughter would never know her father's name. And you didn't fight. Each word was a knife. Each word was deserved." "I know," Min Jae said, his voice breaking. "I know all of it. And I will spend the rest of my life regretting it. Regret doesn't fix what you broke. No, it doesn't. Nothing can fix it. But maybe, if you let me, I can build something new. Something better. Something real." Nia wiped her eyes angrily. "I don't know if I can trust you again. Then let me earn it. One day at a time. One coffee shop visit. One moment of showing up when it would be easier to run. And what happens when your family comes after you? When they try to drag you back to Korea? When being with me gets too complicated again? They won't. You don't know that. I do. Because I burned every bridge. Renounced my position officially. Told my mother that if she ever contacts me again, I'll release every piece of evidence I have about the syndicate's operations to the authorities." Nia's eyes went wide. "You threatened your own mother?" "I told her the truth. That she can have her empire. But she can't have me. And she sure as hell can't have my daughter. She could have you killed. She could. But she won't. Because that would create exactly the kind of scandal she's spent her life avoiding." Min Jae looked down at Maya, still sleeping peacefully in his arms. "I'm done letting her control my life. I'm done choosing fear over love. Pretty words. I know. That's all they are right now. Words. But I'm asking you to let me back them up with actions. For as long as it takes." Maya woke up and immediately started crying. Nia took her back, and Min Jae watched as she comforted their daughter with practiced ease. Watched her whisper soothing words and rock gently and be exactly what Maya needed. She'd been doing this alone for 6 months. while he'd been in Korea, watching deleted footage and hating himself. "I'm sorry," he said suddenly. Nia looked up. "For what specifically?" "There's a long list. For all of it. But mostly for making you do this alone. Pregnancy. Birth. These first 6 months. You shouldn't have had to carry that by yourself." "No. I shouldn't have." Nia's voice was firm. "I should have had a partner. Someone to hold my hand during labor. Someone to share the midnight feedings and the exhaustion and the fear that I was doing everything wrong. I should have been there." "Yes. You should have. I can't change the past. But I'm here now. And I'm asking, begging, for a chance to be here for the future." Nia was quiet for a long time. Then she said something that made Min-jae's heart stop. "Get on your knees." "What?" "You heard me. If you're serious about this, about earning forgiveness, then get on your knees and ask me properly." Min-jae didn't hesitate. He slid out of his chair and knelt on the coffee shop floor. People were staring. The barista had stopped mid-pour. But Min-jae didn't care. He looked up at Nia, at the woman he'd failed and lost and loved more than his own life. And he finally said what he should have said 6 months ago. "Nia Carter, I am so sorry." His voice cracked, but he kept going. "I'm sorry for choosing fear over you. I'm sorry for letting my mother manipulate me. I'm sorry for every moment you cried alone. Every night you were terrified. Every second you thought you didn't matter." Tears were streaming down Nia's face now. "I'm sorry I missed Maya's birth. Her first smile. Her first everything. I'm sorry I wasn't there to hold your hand and tell you how strong you are. How amazing. How you're the best thing that ever happened to me, and I was too stupid to see it." Min-jae. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking you to forget. I'm asking you to let me prove I'm different. Let me show up. Let me be the father Maya deserves. Let me." His voice broke completely. "Let me love you the way I should have from the beginning." The coffee shop was absolutely silent. Nia looked down at him, tears falling onto Maya's sleeping face. "I loved you," she whispered. "So much. And you destroyed me. I know. How do I know you won't do it again?" "You don't. You have to take a leap of faith. The same way I'm taking a leap of faith that you might, someday, be able to love me again." "What if I can't?" "Then I'll love you anyway. For the rest of my life. Even if you never feel the same. Even if I'm just Maya's father and nothing more. I'll take whatever you'll give me." Nia closed her eyes. When she opened them again, something had shifted. "Get up," she said softly. Min-jae stood, his knees aching, his heart pounding. "I can't promise you forgiveness," Nia said. "I can't promise we'll ever be what we were. The trust is broken, Min-jae. And trust takes time to rebuild. I understand. But I can promise you this." She looked down at Maya. "You can be her father. Really be her father. Not just visits. Not just supervised time. You can be part of her life." Relief flooded through him so intensely he almost staggered. "Thank you. God, Nia, thank you." "I'm not finished." Her voice was firm. "You want to be her father? Then you do the work. Night feedings. Diaper changes. Doctor's appointments. All of it. You don't get to be the fun parent who shows up for the good parts. You earn this." "I will. Whatever it takes. And as for us." She paused, studying him. "I don't know. I don't know if I can ever trust you with my heart again. But maybe we can start as co-parents. As friends. And see where it goes from there." It wasn't a declaration of love. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was a door opening. And Min-jae would spend every day proving he deserved to walk through it. They stayed at the coffee shop for another hour. Nia showed him how to change a diaper using the changing table in the bathroom. Taught him the difference between Maya's hungry cry and her tired cry. Let him feed her a bottle while she watched with hawk-like attention. And Min-jae absorbed every detail like his life depended on it. Because it did. This was his life now. Not board meetings or territorial disputes or power plays. This. A baby bottle. A woman who might never forgive him. A second chance he didn't deserve. And he'd never been more terrified. Or more grateful. When they finally left, Nia let him walk them home. Thursday, she said at her apartment door. Same time. Same place. If you're serious about this, you show up. Every time. No excuses. I'll be there. We'll see. She turned to go inside, then paused. Min-jae. Yes. Thank you. For coming. For trying. For. She swallowed hard. For kneeling. I needed to see that. I'd kneel every day if it helped. It might. She almost smiled. It might. The door closed. And Min-jae stood in the hallway, feeling like he'd just climbed a mountain. One coffee shop visit down. A lifetime to go. That night, Min-jae lay in his cheap hotel room and video called Seo-jun. His son's face filled the screen, older than he remembered. 7 now. Growing up without him. Appa. Did you find her? I found her. I found them both. Can I see? Can I see my sister? Min-jae's throat tightened. Not yet, buddy. But soon. I promise. Nia needs time to trust me again. Did you apologize? Like I told you to. I did. On my knees and everything. Seo-jun grinned. Good. Grandmother always said real men don't kneel. But I think real men kneel for the people they love. Out of the mouths of children. You're right, Seo-jun. You're absolutely right. When can we be a family again? The question broke his heart. I don't know. But I'm working on it. Every day. I promise you, I'm working on it. I believe you, Appa. This time, I believe you. After the call ended, Min-jae sat in the dark. He'd lost everything to be here. His empire. His family name. His identity. But sitting in that coffee shop, holding his daughter, earning back Nia's trust one moment at a time, that felt more like power than anything he'd ever controlled. Real power wasn't dominance. It was surrender. Surrender to love. To hope. To the terrifying possibility of being fully known and choosing to show up anyway. Thursday. 10 a.m. He set his alarm. And for the first time in 6 months, Min-jae fell asleep without reviewing security footage. Without trying to control what came next. Just trusting that if he kept showing up, kept kneeling, kept proving he was different. Maybe, just maybe, Nia would let him be part of their family. Not because he demanded it, but because he'd earned it. One diaper change at a time. 3 months later, Min-jae stood in Nia's kitchen at 2 a.m., rocking Maya and singing a lullaby in broken Korean. She was teething. Miserable. And she'd been crying for an hour. Nia had finally fallen asleep on the couch 20 minutes ago, exhausted from a double shift at the community center where she'd started working. And Min-jae had taken over without being asked. Because that's what he did now. He showed up. Sure, baby girl, he murmured, swaying gently. I know it hurts. I know. But Appa's got you. Appa. Father. He'd started using the word a month ago, and Maya had responded by reaching for him, her tiny hand grabbing his finger. It was the greatest victory of his life. Greater than any territory won. Any deal closed. Any enemy defeated. His daughter knew him now. And that was everything. Maya finally settled, her small body relaxing against his chest, her breathing evening out into sleep. Min-jae carefully placed her in the crib they'd set up in the corner of Nia's bedroom. The apartment was too small for a nursery, and stood there for a moment, just watching her. 9 months old. Growing so fast. Already trying to crawl. He'd missed her first 6 months. But he was here for this. For all of this. And he'd never take a single moment for granted again. You're good at that. Min-jae turned to find Nia in the doorway, wrapped in a blanket, watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. She finally went down, he said quietly. I think the teething tablets helped. You didn't have to stay. I could have handled it. I know you could have. You've been handling everything alone for too long. He moved toward the door, giving Nia space. But you don't have to anymore. That's what partners do. They share the hard parts. Partners, Nia repeated softly. Is that what we are? It was the question that had been hanging between them for 3 months. They were co-parents. Friends, maybe. They'd fallen into an easy rhythm, Min-jae showing up for feedings and doctor's appointments and late-night crying sessions. But they weren't together. Not really. Nia had made that clear from the beginning. Trust had to be earned, not given. And Min-jae was still earning it. I don't know what we are, he admitted. But I know I'm here. Every day. However you'll let me be. Nia studied him for a long moment. You got a job, she said finally. Yes. At a construction company. Manual labor. Honest work. Your hands must hurt. Min-jae looked down at his calloused palms, so different from the manicured hands that had signed syndicate contracts. They do. But it's good pain. Earned pain. The kind that comes from building something instead of destroying it. You hate it. I don't. I actually... He paused, surprised by his own words. I actually like it. Knowing at the end of the day I helped build something real. Something that will last. No blood. No threats. Just honest work for honest pay. The mighty Kong Min-jae, construction worker. Nia almost smiled. Your mother must be having a stroke. Probably. But I wouldn't know. I haven't spoken to her in 3 months. She hasn't tried to contact you? Oh, she's tried. Emails. Calls. She even sent someone to my apartment to negotiate my return. Min-jae shook his head. I told them the same thing I told her. I'm done. Forever. They can keep the empire. I'm building something better. What's that? A life. A real one. With my daughter. With... He stopped himself. With you. If you'll have me. But he didn't say it. Because pushing too hard would only drive her away. Nia moved into the kitchen, and Min-jae followed. She made tea, chamomile for herself, green for him, because she'd learned that's what he preferred. Small things. Tiny gestures that said she was paying attention. That maybe, just maybe, she was starting to trust him again. Seo-jun called me yesterday, Nia said, sitting at her small kitchen table. Min-jae's heart jumped. He did. He wanted to talk about his sister. About Maya. He asked if he could video call with her sometime. And what did you say? I said yes. He's her brother, Min-jae. He deserves to know her. Min-jae sat down heavily, overwhelmed with gratitude. Thank you. That. God, Nia, you have no idea what that means. I have some idea. I've seen the way you light up when he calls. The way you talk about him. She paused. You miss him. Every day. But I can't go back. Even for him. Because going back means losing Maya. And me. Yes. Nia was quiet for a moment. What if there was another way? What do you mean? What if? She took a breath. What if Seo-jun came here? For a visit. To meet his sister. To see you. Min-jae stared at her. You'd allow that? I'd facilitate it. He could stay with us for a week. Meet Maya properly. Spend time with his father who's actually trying now instead of hiding behind cameras. The offer was so generous it made his throat tight. Your apartment is too small for all of us. Then we find somewhere bigger. We. Nia looked down at her tea. I've been thinking. About us. About what you've been doing these past 3 months. Showing up. Working. Being present. Not trying to control everything. Min-jae's heart was pounding. You're different, Nia continued. Really different. Not just performing. Not just saying what I want to hear. You're actually changing. Because I want to be worthy of you. Of Maya. Of this second chance. And that's... Her voice cracked. That's what I needed to see. Not words. Not promises. Just consistent action. Day after day. Week after week. Being the man you said you'd be. Does that mean? It means I'm willing to try. Really try. Not just co-parenting. Not just friendship. But us. Together. As a family. Min-jae couldn't breathe. But, Nia held up a hand, this only works if we're equals. I'm not going to be the woman you protect and control. I'm going to be your partner. Your equal. Someone you trust to make decisions with you, not for you. I don't want to control you. I never want to make you feel that way again. Then prove it. Keep proving it. Every day. Choose us over fear. Choose honesty over protection. Choose partnership over power. Min-jae reached across the table, and Nia let him take her hand. I choose you, he said. I will choose you every day for the rest of my life. In the big moments and the small ones. When it's easy and when it's terrifying. I choose us. Nia's eyes filled with tears. I love you, Nia Carter. I never stopped. And I will spend every day showing you that love isn't about control. It's about surrender. It's about trust. It's about... She kissed him. Soft. Tentative. Like testing whether this was real. And Min-jae kissed her back with every ounce of love and regret and hope he'd been carrying for 9 months. When they pulled apart, both of them were crying. I love you too, Nia whispered. I tried not to. Tried to protect myself. But I do. I love you, you infuriating, impossible man. Is that a yes? It's a yes to trying. A yes to being a family. A yes to, she smiled through her tears. A yes to finding a bigger apartment so your son can visit his sister. Min-jae pulled her close, holding her like she was the most precious thing in the world. Because she was. 2 weeks later, Seo-jun arrived in Chicago. Min-jae picked him up from the airport, and the moment his 7-year-old son saw him, he ran. Appa! Min-jae caught him, lifting him up, holding him tight. I missed you so much, buddy. I missed you too. Is she here? Is Maya here? She's at home with Nia, waiting to meet her big brother. They'd found a small house in a quiet neighborhood. 3 bedrooms. A yard. Nothing like the Kong estate, but infinitely more valuable. Because it was theirs. Built on honesty. On love. On the choice to be different. When they walked through the door, Nia was on the floor with Maya, who was attempting to crawl. Seo-jun froze, staring at his baby sister. She's so small, he whispered. She's 9 months old, Nia said gently. And she's been waiting to meet you. Want to say hello? Seo-jun approached slowly, kneeling beside Maya. The baby looked up at him with wide, curious eyes. And then she smiled. That huge, gummy smile that lit up her whole face. She likes me, Seo-jun breathed. Of course she does, Min-jae said, his voice thick with emotion. You're her big brother. Seo-jun reached out carefully, and Maya grabbed his finger. Just like she'd grabbed Min-jae's. And in that moment, watching his 2 children connect for the first time, Min-jae understood what he'd been searching for his entire life. Not power. Not control. Not legacy. This. Family. Real. Messy. Complicated. Beautiful family. That night, after Seo-jun was asleep in his new room and Maya was down in her crib, Min-jae and Nia sat on their small porch. He's happy, Nia said softly. Your son. He's really happy. He is. Thanks to you. Thanks to us. We did this together. Min-jae took her hand. I never thanked you properly. For giving me this chance. For letting me be part of Maya's life. For trusting me again when I gave you every reason not to. You earned it. Every single day. Showing up. Being present. Being honest. That's all I ever wanted. I'm going to keep earning it. For the rest of my life. Good. Because this, she gestured at the house, at the life they were building. This is going to be hard sometimes. Blending our family. Dealing with your mother if she ever shows up. Navigating 2 cultures. Raising an Afro Korean daughter who will face challenges we can't fully understand. I know. But we'll do it together. As partners. As equals. As a family, Min-jae added. Nia smiled. As a family. Inside, through the window, they could see Seo-jun's door open slightly. He padded quietly to Maya's room, and they watched as he stood beside her crib, just looking at his sister with protective wonder. He's going to be a good big brother, Nia said. He's going to be better than I was a father. Better than I was a son. He's going to break the cycle. You already broke the cycle, Min-jae. The moment you chose us over your empire. The moment you got on your knees and asked for forgiveness. The moment you decided love was more powerful than fear. Min-jae pulled her close, and they sat in comfortable silence, watching their family through the window. This was his empire now. Not Seoul. Not the syndicate. Not power and fear and control. This. A modest house in Chicago. 2 children who trusted him. A woman who loved him despite his failures. A life built on truth instead of surveillance. On surrender instead of dominance. On the radical, terrifying choice to be known. 6 months later, they made it official. A small ceremony in a courthouse. Nia in a simple white dress. Min-jae in a suit he'd bought with his construction paycheck. Seo-jun as ring bearer. Maya babbling happily in her grandmother's arms. Nia's grandmother, who'd flown in from Atlanta and immediately claimed her great-granddaughter as her own. No syndicate leaders. No Kong family. No cameras recording every moment. Just them. And when the judge pronounced them married, when Min-jae kissed his wife for the first time as husband and wife, he felt something he'd never felt before. Peace. True, earned, hard-won peace. That night, as they put both children to bed, Seo-jun reading to Maya in her nursery, both of them giggling, Nia turned to Min-jae. Any regrets? About what? Giving up everything. Your power. Your legacy. Your family name. Min-jae looked at his son reading to his daughter. At the woman who'd given him a second chance. At the life they'd built from the ashes of his worst mistakes. No regrets, he said. Not a single one. Because this chaotic, beautiful, imperfect life, was worth more than any empire. This was a different kind of power. The power of showing up. Of being honest. Of loving without conditions. The power of being chosen every day and choosing back. And as Min-jae held his wife close, watching their Afro Korean family find joy in the ordinary moments, he understood what the cameras had never been able to show him. That love wasn't something you could monitor or control. It was something you had to trust. Something you had to surrender to. Something you had to earn. Every single day. For the rest of your life. The end. But not really. Because their story didn't end with a wedding or a perfect moment. It continued in the daily choice to show up. In the hard conversations about race and identity that Maya and Seo-jun would need as they grew. In the healing that came slowly, imperfectly, but steadily. In the life they built together. Not perfect, but real. And somewhere in Korea, in a heavily guarded estate, Madame Kong sat in her empty house. Surrounded by cameras that showed her everything except what mattered. While in Chicago, her son held his daughter and sang her lullabies in broken Korean. Teaching her words like sarang, love, gajok, family, jip, home. And Maya would grow up knowing all of them. In both languages. In both cultures. In a family that chose each other every single day. That was the real happy ending. Not the moment they reunited. But the lifetime of small moments after. The moments no camera could capture. The moments that mattered most. The moments that made them a family. Thank you for watching Afro Korean Tales and Stories. If this story stayed with you, there are more waiting here. Subscribe to Afro Korean Tales and Stories for a love that crosses cultures and lingers. Tell us in the comments, what emotion are you leaving this story with?